Okay, October 24th, planning board. Do I need to open this hearing up and then continue it, or?
We cannot open it, so we're just gonna continue it.
Well, I know, but do I have to read this?
You do not read it, no?
Okay. Okay, so we're continuing the 21 Century Mill hearing to next meeting there.
The next meeting, so that would be November 14th at 7:30 PM. So there's
Okay.
two reasons why we're continuing it. First off, we don't have a
Quorum.
sufficient quorum, we don't have
Yeah.
quorum members present. And secondly, the applicants made the request to continue it, so.
Yeah, it works out. So they're gonna be coming forward with.
He said that they may or may not come forward with new information.
Okay. All right, you wanna make a motion?
Oh, do I make a motion to continue?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing till November 14th at 7:30.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next we have, well, so the 147 Long Hill Road is postponed as well, in case anybody was here for that. And that's because, well, Mark would have to recuse himself, and we only have two people, so hopefully nobody was here for that. So next up is Still River Commons, proposed 40B project on Still River Road. We're here to provide comments to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the project. The Board of Appeals requested comments as part of their public hearing process to review the project's comprehensive permit application. Okay. So we wrote up some draft comments. You guys need to review those, or?
I did not know.
Are there copies for the audience?
Huh?
Are there any copies for the audience?
Not at present, no.
I can read them off.
Yeah.
So these are our comments. The planning board suggests that an outside consultant be hired to review the applicant's pro forma to ensure development costs are accurate and reasonable. So that's to do with 40B, affordable and stuff like that, right?
Correct, they can't make a profit more than 20% of total project cost.
Yeah. The planning board recommends that the operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater management system be required as an attachment to the condominium association documents for the development. The board also encourages the zoning board of appeals to require the applicant to provide funding to ensure proper maintenance of the system for the first 5 years after the development is completed and the condominium association has been established. So, pretty much review the stormwater and then set up a fund to make sure that that's maintained for 5 years.
Because as the condo association is sort of getting their legs and getting, you know, kind of understanding how to run the
Yeah.
development, it's probably a good thing to have some funding there so that.
And it's to make sure the drains aren't being clogged and
Yeah, because they're doing
everything's
an
working properly.
underground infiltration system to make sure that's being properly maintained, so.
Yeah, and that's actually something that we, you know, when we come, like the common driveway on Bond Hill, we were like, well, how are we supposed to know what's going on? And we, you know, when we toyed with the idea of this,
Mhm.
but, so that's kind of new, which is, I think, good for this
The
project.
funding's new, I mean, I think it's pretty standard to have the stormwater the operation and maintenance plan attached to the docs for the development.
Yeah.
But I think requiring funding is also important,
Yeah.
because then it makes sure that there's,
And the ZBA will come up with a figure for that, or how would that?
yeah, I don't know exactly
Yeah.
know how,
Yeah.
but.
I mean, related to that, do we also want, for the first some number of years, want copies of the maintenance contracts? Not just that they have the O&M in
Okay,
place,
seeing
but
it,
actually
seeing it, that's
ensure that they're
actually
following
the-
through on it.
It's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
You know, especially if it's a new association.
Yeah,
I'd
just
probably
for,
say
just for the first 5 years.
Well, I was gonna say 10, kind of 5 all year, you know, but, you know, make sure that they're really, you know, 5 with, you know, developer funding and then 5 kind of on their own to make sure everything's being done. I mean, it's an ugly sight, but, you know, we're trying to, you know, there's limits to what we can.
So I'll just read through all these, and
Yeah.
then if people in the audience have anything to add, you know, this is kind of our draft. So. The planning board recommends that the applicant confirm whether a shade tree hearing is required with Bolton's tree warden to remove any trees 1.5 inch diameter or greater, or stone walls within the public right of way. If stone walls should be removed, the board recommends relocating these walls to other locations on the property. The board also recommends providing replacement trees on the property for any trees removed in the public right of way. Next, the planning board recommends that the design of the driveway meet Bolton's zoning bylaw for a common driveway, section 250-17, and Bolton's common driveway rules and regulations required for developments consisting of 3 to 5 lots to ensure proper access by emergency vehicles. A profile of the driveway should be provided. Next up, the planning board recommends that the design of the retaining wall be stamped by a professional structural engineer, given that the wall is greater than 4 feet. The board also recommends that the applicant verify that the wall will not impact the migration of amphibians and other animals potentially migrating to and from Bolton Flats Wildlife Management Area. So is this a crossing, or?
It's not a crossing, but if you look at the plans, you can pull the plans, you'll see that there's a pretty significant retaining wall along the edge of the wetland.
Is the retaining wall within the Concom jurisdiction?
The retaining wall itself,
Yeah. Is it within the buffer zone?
let's take a look, they're a portion of it.
So they, I mean, no matter what, they have to go through Concom though as well.
They are, but
Okay.
because you guys tend to look at retaining walls, I added it.
Oh,
You
okay,
can certainly
alright.
take that off if you don't feel like it's in your jurisdiction.
And certainly the getting the retaining wall stamped is.
Yeah, no, I think that's, but it was the migration, I didn't know that, Concom.
We can take that out, I mean,
I mean, we're town citizens, we have that concern. It's something the board, in conjunction with the retaining wall, I think has, would
Here's the
have
retaining
concerns
wall,
with,
yeah.
so.
It's definitely within the floodplain, so there's, they're filling the floodplain here. So here's the wetland, yes, it is in the wetland.
So it's in the,
Basically, the whole project.
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing I would just say is just, you know, I don't have expertise with regard to migration of, but, animals
And
like that.
we're not saying that we need to review it, we're
Oh,
just saying
okay.
that it needs to be,
Look at
Yeah.
it.
It needs to be looked at.
yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
So whether that's ZBA
Right.
working with Concom or
Okay,
hiring
okay.
a specialist to
I
do
see
it
what
or
you're
whatever.
All right.
I think it's a concern that we have, and just,
I just want, yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
The planning board recommends the zoning board of appeals limit the hours of construction to Monday through Friday from 7 AM to 5 PM and not allow construction during federal holidays or weekends, which is kind of our standard wording, well, moving forward.
yeah.
The planning board notes that a stormwater pollution prevention plan, SWPPP.
Sweat.
SWIP, SWIP without an I, shall be submitted prior to construction of the project. Given the environmental sensitive nature of the site, the board recommends that all SWIP inspection reports be submitted to the town planner and conservation administrator during construction to ensure erosion controls are being properly maintained. The planning board recommends that the applicant obtain written approval authorization from the town of Harvard indicating that the firefighting water supply located in Harvard can be used to support this development. Was that the plan? That's
What they submitted, they submitted a separate exhibit that shows, the firefighting water supply coming from Harvard, and we don't have any documentation right now from Harvard saying that that's.
Well, how long is their driveway?
They don't have the stations on here.
Is there a key? Okay. This is 80 feet, oh, so it's not that long. 80, 160, like 300 feet maybe? To the back?
This is
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
So 200.
I apologize, I should know off the top of my head, I just can't remember.
And where's the water source?
It's up in Harvard on this side of the road.
And where's the closest one for us? Nowhere's near.
Nowhere near.
Yeah. Well, one of our bylaws is that they need to be within 1,000 feet driving distance to a water source.
Right, but can we
We can.
can we
recommend
burden
it.
Harvard's fire ponds with our developments?
Yeah. That doesn't, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It should be probably ours.
It's gotta be ours, or they have
Or
to
they
have
have to
an
agree.
agreement
Yeah.
from Harvard.
So this is what they submitted, which is 1,000 feet to the Harvard.
Uh,
But I have, I've been talking to the town planner and Harvard, the planning board's gonna weigh in on this as well.
The Harvard
along-
Planning Board?
Yeah, and along with their conservation commission and possibly their conservation stuff, so we'll get some feedback from them.
Photographs of the whole
Um, And so clearly there's no source close. There's no other supply.
No, so I mean, if they don't, tap into that, they would probably have to do a fire cistern.
So maybe we should add in here, if not approved, then they need their own cistern. We recommend, I guess we can't force them to do it, but,
Well, ZBA can.
yeah, CBA, I'm saying we can. The planning board recommends that a landscaping plan be submitted by the applicant. The planning board recommends that the site plans be updated to show snow storage locations. So SWIP, does that includes runoff?
No, no, your SWIP is for during construction only, so
Oh,
that
okay.
basically, so actually, that was a question I was gonna ask, can we, and they had a stormwater report, and I didn't get a chance to fully.
Yeah, do you want to take a look at it now?
Sure. Yeah.
So, Horsley Witten Group did the peer review for this, and they were
Okay.
pretty extensive with the
They were.
stormwater comments, so I
Okay.
felt pretty confident that it got covered, but
Okay, so if they, if
more eyes,
someone's,
more eyes the better, so.
if someone, so their comments have gone to the ZBA?
The ZBA, yes.
Okay, then that's great, I can just look at it.
So I do think we should, even if I recommend, whatever we would standard, whatever our standard stormwater kind of
Yeah.
control, we should
I mean, one
recommend
thing
that.
that I was thinking about and Horsley Witten did point out was there is some runoff that's going to Still River Road. So it would be nice to know, like, they didn't really account for that in their report. So I think that's something that should be accounted for, since we did receive some feedback from a butter saying that they can flood in this area.
Yeah.
So Samuels, like Long Hill and all the other projects that we've been looking at, that should be, they should.
So it needs to be
more
captured
seriously.
before it gets to the
Yeah.
road. Yeah, because Joe isn't gonna want it running off onto the road and icing up.
And the wetlands.
Yeah.
They are. This
Two
might,
here, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
That's
they're
all back
increasing, I see that they're increasing and they're saying it's basically negligible increase, that it's across the 2.9 acres. I disagree a little bit with that, except for the fact that I don't, do we have their Andrew Kent, so, oh, yeah.
So this is the third party, or is this the
I can
applicant?
grab their volume.
This is the applicant's report.
Yeah.
I can grab the, where's the Witten report? I don't know if I have it printed yet.
I mean, is it worth mentioning
Here it is.
that we would recommend what comments are in the Horsley Witten be addressed?
Yes, definitely.
Just as
Do you
kind
mind
of.
opening that door? Sorry, just swing it open. Just in case somebody's coming that sees us.
So on,
So I do think we should have some comments on recommending
Yeah.
runoff. And so when we talk about runoff, like Martha just said, we talk about the road, but, you can't be dumping stormwater runoff into wetlands, right? It needs to be a detention basin.
It needs to be treated and detained before you discharge it. Now, they, where's it discharging to?
So it's basically, there's a trench drain here that's getting captured,
Yeah.
and then that's tying in with this double ditch basin here, and it's going into the ice
That's the
road, and
six.
then the cold ditch.
Okay, but they don't have an overflow?
They do not, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is,
and that's something that was captured in the
yeah,
report as well.
they should have an overflow, that's,
So how, where would you design in an overflow?
you would just have, like an outlet control structure that would then have a pipe that would either discharge here or discharge, I mean, depending on how it modeled, but to design it without an overflow is just,
So that would be one recommendation we should.
we would recommend that there would be an overflow provided for the stormwater system, because, I mean, we all know we get larger storms than
Right.
what we design to, and, or if it's not maintained properly or something like that, you
Yeah.
want to have that ability so it doesn't back up
Do we have to,
and potentially cause major problems.
do we have to specify a size of overflow?
No, that should be designed, they should, they should,
Based on models?
they just need to, I would just put it, they need to include an overflow from the system. The engineer would look at how that needs to be designed. But you can just say an overflow should be provided.
Erica, number 4, the design is common driveway rules.
Yeah.
With 8 units, traffic-wise, it's not the same as the 3 to 5 houses.
No, it's slightly more.
Yeah. What's the next
But
step
that
up
was,
from
it
common
would be
driveway?
subdivision, and this is not a subdivision, that's why I said common driveway. I mean, technically, it's only 2 lots, not 3,
So-
but you are,
Common
Agreed,
driveway
yeah.
common driveway is 12 feet and subdivisions.
and they're actually, I think it's 15 feet wide,
Oh,
so
15.
they're exceeding the width for a common driveway, but they don't have, my biggest concern is that they don't have the turnaround areas for the
Mhm.
emergency vehicles, and that's something that the fire department already commented on as well.
Okay.
They're asking for it, probably gonna have to do it anyway, so why not just meet all of the requirements for the common driveway?
Mhm.
And it's probably not a stretch for them to be able to do that.
What you looking for?
The volume. That's right, you guys can.
Any comments from the audience? Martha?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Martha Remington, Main Street. That fire pond looks like part of the Still River, just, you know, it doesn't look like it's a pond.
The Harvard, the one in Harvard, you're saying?
Yes, and it has beaver gates on both sides of the culvert that go underneath to both the wetlands on the east side of Still River and this backwater of Still River. I don't know, they don't have hookups in that pond. I don't know if they have hookups in any of their fire ponds, but I was just wondering, is that a reliable place? Of course, the way things are going, it'll be bigger, but
Yeah.
it looks, it's not a pond as far as I can see from the road.
Yeah, I have no clue on that fire
Yeah, I
pond.
don't know much about it, I mean, at this point, we need to even figure out if they can even use it, and if they can use
Right.
it, then we get to the point where what would they need to,
Well, for sure, I think that's a good note that
Yeah.
you know, they should get approval from Harvard.
If it is a certified fire pond.
Yeah.
and if it's maintained, and there's access to it, and all that.
Yeah, and I think our fire department would need to sign off that they
Like,
can
of
use it.
course, yeah.
So I think it goes
Yeah.
beyond just making sure that there's access to it.
So what number was that again?
I mean, we can expand upon that,
Yeah. That was number,
that's number 8.
number 8. So you said recommends that there were being written approval authorization from the town of Harvard indicating that firefighting water supply located in Harvard can be used to support this development.
And I
That-
think we also need Bolton Fire Department to
Approved by Bolton Fire Department. Otherwise, our fire protection bylaw is recommended to be followed, which means that they would need a cistern or whatever.
So they can, would that be like holding tanks for water or just a sprinkler system, or what's your bylaws say for that?
Yeah, it'd be like a holding tank, right?
Is that each unit or someplace?
Is that what?
Is that each unit, a holding tank inside each unit, or how's that work out?
We have a holding,
It would be one holding tank that would then be
yeah,
For the
be
entire.
plumbed into
yeah.
sprinklers.
I think it
It
was
could be
more,
done that way, or just, there would be the attachment that the fire department could connect
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
vehicle up to.
just so there's a water source available.
Yeah.
But I know, for instance, the Main Street houses that are going up, they're gonna do sprinkler systems.
Right.
They don't wanna put in a fire tank, so
So
they
they
could,
tap up a well?
yeah,
with a-
so it'd be off their
backflow
private
stuff,
well,
yeah.
yeah.
I will say, I just did a quick calculation, it does seem that their increase is negligible. It's
Okay.
at least based on what their, the quick numbers are things.
I mean, based on their model,
Yeah.
their 100 water event, right?
What's
100
actually,
year
it's
event.
just the 2 year, because they are decreasing for the 110 year, the 2 year they were increasing. So,
What does that mean, decreasing flood review?
They're slowing it down, so they're less than their existing.
Mhm.
And that's what you want to strive for, is to either meet it or be less. So they are meeting it for the 10 and the 100. The 2, they are increasing slightly.
So when they say these numbers, this volume?
This is a rate, this is not a volume.
Oh,
It's a
rate. Oh,
So
okay.
it's cubic feet per second, so it's how fast it's leaving or getting to that discharge point.
Okay. And what was the third party's comments on their rate? Was it, were they okay with it?
Let's see. Okay, so the first comment was about Still River Road and separating out those catchment areas for that. So in terms of standard 2, which is the pre versus post, they talk about using L18 measures. Sizing the trench appropriately for the slope of the driveway are the great emphasis. They talk about the overflow. They don't agree with their time concentrations.
What did they use for time concentrations?
There were some discrepancies on size of pipes, so they asked them to clarify that.
And so now the ZBA will use this?
Oh, yeah, these will all get worked out with.
Yeah, so I think we should just add a
with
comment
Fisher and
that we would recommend Horsley and Witten's comments be addressed as part of the
Yeah,
review.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to repeat everything.
Yeah, yeah.
They didn't recommend that an overflow, they just basically kind of, they asked them to verify that water basically won't.
Isn't gonna pond up.
Right at the trench, that's basically what they ask. During the 100-year, they don't say necessarily that they need to provide an overflow, so we can add that if you'd like.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I see that they say both, well, there's A and C soils. Obviously, the A soils are really well infiltrating, and there's probably, but there is some C soils there. So I just think as an added protective measure for them, it's not a big thing to add that structure.
Okay. The other thing to
Just,
note,
I mean, we
too-
can just say we would recommend, it be looked into or something.
Okay.
I think what we had recommended overflow is design into system. I think we can go above and beyond.
Yeah,
There's
it
no
just,
reason why we shouldn't.
it just provides a relief
Yeah,
during a really,
That's beyond the entrance of the driveway.
yeah, because what's gonna
I mean, it
happen,
really won't
if this
run off.
got clogged, or
Yeah.
if this got filled, it's gonna back up, it's gonna come out here, and it's either gonna go that way or into the road, or, well, it's actually gonna go to the road.
Into the road.
That's where it's gonna go.
And if you look at the pictures from the 2010 storm, you get something that's pretty significant. We're not gonna be wanting to add, what is it?
Yeah,
Did you see the picture?
and this,
I mean, we're not gonna
Ex-
necessarily want to be
exactly.
adding to
yes,
that.
so this just allows, during a large storm, I mean, it needs to be designed appropriately as an outlet control structure to make sure
Mhm.
that they're still meeting what they need to do, but it puts the relief towards the wetland versus allowing it to bubble up where you could have ponding, ice, depending what time of year it is, and then flooding.
oh, and also we recommended this before, in our comments, recommend that you utilize the DRB. Should we have that?
They
already
already
went
went to
through
the
that.
DRB.
Oh, they did?
They
Okay.
did, yeah.
What'd the DRB say?
We had, it was before any of this stuff was submitted,
Yeah.
so we didn't have the storm report, we didn't have a lot of the, all of this, so.
DRB is
but-
not necessarily looking at storm.
No, but Michelle had some architectural comments,
Yeah.
there was just some general stuff that was kind of, it was months ago, so.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
So that didn't go right.
But we did have specific comments on that, and
Yeah.
I think we mentioned,
Landscaping.
yeah, there was landscape, that was one, and just that we would really look for them to follow, even though they don't have to follow, the planning board rules and regs, we would really look for them to follow them as much as possible. And specifically, the Mass State Stormwater standards and some of the other things that we were looking for.
So I saw the in-hand.
Yeah. Betsy Taylor Kennedy, Water Aquatic Hill.
I'm wondering whether they've estimated what their condo fee is, and is it different for people who are in the affordable unit versus the full price unit? Because if you're talking about, and with only 8 units, you're talking about maintenance for the stormwater system, and possibly a cistern and pipes and other, other additional things. Having lived in a condo, I know that there's never enough money, and you're trying to get that. I just wondered whether they have an estimate of what people would be paying. Is that, and an estimate of what a stormwater system would cost to maintain over so many years?
I don't know if that number's been determined yet. I don't know if they do that as part of their condo docs.
But we maybe just ask that they take into account the maintenance of these things, that in addition to just plowing the driveways and mowing the lawns, that you've got other things that they have to worry about.
Part of why I wanted to make sure that we actually saw the maintenance contracts, to make sure it's actually being done.
Yep.
Well, maybe we should add on top of your note is that we recommend that it's the condo
Excuse
fee.
me?
Yeah, I know, I was just finishing this comment I saw you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just make sure, it gets included into the condo fee. What are you gonna say?
Sharon Johnson, 436 Stone River Road. I was just going to say that in that 400-page document, it's the comprehensive plan, there was some figures about condos.
Was it?
It
Okay, I haven't had a chance to get
Yeah,
through it
the
all.
affordable housing, I think they said $180 a month.
And the normal would be what?
Normally, what would it be?
They didn't have that in their budget, they didn't have the
So
selling price,
they capped.
just for the affordable, and that's all for the formula.
Yeah.
If I could just add another comment on
Should you
the
just identify
whole.
yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Eric Johnson, I'm her wife. We literally,
You're my husband.
I'm her husband. We literally live right across, so I basically had 2 separate comments. One in terms of the overflow. Historically, and anybody who's driven down Steel River Road knows that for many months of the year, where this is going is literally at the very bottom of the hill, and the water has built up there for many years. The highway department has had many, many fixes, none of which have apparently worked. So this is not a new problem, so this is an exacerbation of an existing problem. That's not just an issue with the roads and all of the driveways and the traffic hazard, but also the wetlands. Secondly, on the issue of the sophistication of some of the systems, the fire system, the groundwater system, the septic systems, we're talking about an extremely historically, environmentally, the wetlands. It's such a sensitive area, and the preservation of this going forward. The developers are going to be gone. Anything that's been spent, it's going to be on the hands of the condo. It's going to be on the hands of the condo association. Anything fails, it's going to be on the hands of these people. We're talking about sophisticated systems with unsophisticated people running a condo association, and the consequences are just dire. We're not looking at a significant addition to affordable housing in the city, in the town. They're adding 2 units out of 8. So it's not even an addition of 2 units, because it's offset by 6 more units to this housing area. They're not talking about insignificant exceptions and waivers. They're talking about a whole laundry list. Almost every bylaw, groundwater protection, septic system, everything they're talking about. The density, you're talking about increasing the density by 8 times. This isn't, just some piece of property. It's a beautiful, sensitive piece of property on one of the most beautiful roads, not just in the town, but in the entire Commonwealth, if not New England. I think to ignore all of this and just look at, the technicalities. You guys have a lot of power here. You have a lot more power than you think you have between you and the ZBA, and you shouldn't just, let them roughshod this. This is a fig leaf. This is an affordable housing. This is a developer trying to make money off of a really pretty piece of property that shouldn't support this. And, you know, I just think that, you know, we're all here. We're all neighbors, we're all townspeople. You know, be really, really careful about what you do here. This is just, it's not right.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if it was up to us, we wouldn't, you know, be having this development here. If we were in compliance with, you know, our 10% affordable and we had control over where 40Bs could go, we would clearly not be allowed.
But you do, but you do. I'm an attorney as well as a neighbor.
I mean, we could recommend and give our comments, but, I mean.
You know, the standard in 40B includes, you know, the needs of the community. It has to be in conformity with the needs of the community. They talk about the community, the nature of the community, they talk about the people, they talk about the environment, you know, they talk about the animals, they talk about our history. They talk about, I mean, historically sensitive. You go back, way before any of us were there, that's, you know, that's one of the essential elements of you know, the whole, you know, Native American presence in Massachusetts. Still River Road is one of the central parts of where so much stuff happened. You guys have a lot more power, you know? And you represent us. You're doing this for us, you know, not the developer.
One comment I would like to make is when I was out there doing the site visit before they went in, we also had a wetland scientist as part of the review look at the site, and she did some soil testing, and the soils, not that this is, you know, new information for a lot of people in this room, the soils, the vegetation, the animals did support. And what soils? Yeah.
There were hydric soils.
I mean, it supported wetland resource areas, and it didn't follow the line that's here on the plan. So that's something that they did recommend that they go back and actually do an INRAD, because they didn't do that with Concom. So.
If I could add something else, in terms of everything they did, a lot of the stuff they did was based on submittals when it was a one-family lot.
Right.
The stuff for the Concom. Lots of this stuff, and now they're coming back to you and saying, well, yeah, we know we have to do this. You know, we'll get back to you on that stuff. You know, these guys could be the most legitimate guys in the world. And you need to understand they're not going to be there 5 years from now. You know, talking about a 5-year budget, 5 years is when stuff lasts.
Yeah.
It's at the end of 5 years they break down.
I think, you know, what we could do is, because we are, like you're saying, making technical recommendations, which I think are valid. But I don't know if the planning board can make an overall recommendation if the ZBA should approve or not approve it. That's something that the planning board
Sure you
doesn't.
can.
Yeah, I mean, the board can provide any comments
Yeah.
that he sees fit.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
and
'cause
this
co-
isn't the only opportunity too. I mean, we're
Yeah.
gonna have several more hearings, so, you know, we can do an initial comment letter and call it our initial comment letter and say that there may be additional comments to come or something
Yeah.
like that.
But,
You know, depending
but what
on
I'm saying
the
is,
results of the-
I mean, we could say, because thinking about like 21 Century Mill, you know, clearly we had issues with that being single-family houses, worried about the 100-year floodplain, worried about vernal pools. So, you know, we kind of held that whole thing off until in the spring, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know,
You know, there are just
Well,
dozens and
hold on.
dozens and dozens of issues.
I have to call on him. So, you know, potentially maybe we should think about as a board whether we want to recommend the project as a whole, you know. Like, we're not the final say, of course, and it could be used, it could be used as the town's argument. If the ZBA denies it, you know, you could say the planning board recommended not to approve it for XYZ, Concom recommended not to approve it for XYZ, you know, as part of the argument against it, you know, if we want to take that approach. Our denying it won't, you know, ultimately technically be anything. It has to go to the ZBA, but it would be a recommendation to the ZBA that if it was up to the planning board, you know, we wouldn't do it. You know, if that's something we want to add.
I think adding that as a kind of a conclusion probably is wouldn't be bad. I don't know if we need to vote.
Do you wanna do that tonight, or do you wanna wait to see how?
Well, what are we waiting for?
Well,
Do Sherman Hills to
but,
come back
but,
and redesign it?
well, I was gonna say, I think until we have agreed upon wetland flagging, any
that
comments that
is
we
a-
make
yeah.
here.
It does a huge
Yeah,
impact.
that's why
It has a huge
said
impact, so
that's a
I
huge impact.
I think we should almost start with that this is based on.
I didn't include it as a comment because that's the jurisdiction of the Conservation
yeah.
Commission.
It is, but that flag,
But
that
but I
flag
know
impacts
that they're
all of
maybe
our.
So what are you saying, the soils that they're considering
They're
upland?
called hyd, so if you have, you need like 3 characteristics to kind of define wetlands, and and hydric soils is one of them. So if you have hydric soils, that could show the presence of wetlands. Now, I'm not a wetland scientist, so I don't want to get too far into that. but
So what they're
it
considering
indicates-
upland has hydric soils.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that could indicate, now I think it has to have a couple other things too as well. Again, I'm not a wetland scientist, but that is, my understanding is, so.
But I think if the engineer is questioning it, is conservation weighed in on that yet?
They haven't submitted to conservation yet.
Okay.
So they will at that point, but.
So, can I just back up for a second? Was this, when we talked about this plan that was originally done for a 1 acre
Mhm.
lot, was there a Concom filing that was done for that? And is there an order of conditions that's still valid?
So there is an order of conditions. They actually extended the order of conditions back.
So
in
there is a
August.
valid order of
There is a
conditions.
valid order of conditions.
On a single
But this
family house.
But for one
wetland
house,
line isn't out of an ANRAD.
But it was done as part of
As
the
part
order,
of
the
the-
order of conditions. So there might be, that's,
And it's possible they kind of said, yeah, it's about here, but we're sufficiently far away with this single-family home.
I know, but
It's
they
not
should
worth-
have-
But
You know.
Horsley Wynn is basically taking a stance that the Concom can require the ANRAD.
They
I know
can,
what you're
okay,
saying, because
yeah.
it's new information and because
Okay.
there's wildlife and soil.
And the
everything
layout
to
has
back it up,
changed, okay.
And that could potentially impact the layout. They're saying
they
that
can-
they
they
can
can do
that.
then require that.
Yeah, and I think for all of our feedback, it leverages off of having a good wetland line.
Absolutely,
So
I
I
mean,
think-
first of all,
I think it's
that,
fair for
there's,
us to say
there's extremely
we want that
little
as well.
upland area on this site. I think
Yep.
everyone's clear on that. And if the wetland line is encroaching more onto the site, that's going to make that even smaller. We do have filling of the floodplain. It looks like they are compensating that, but if that wetland line is within there, you can't, I mean, there's,
Right,
that
if
is-
that line moves at all, it impacts the entire. So I think it's fair for us to say,
Actually, that was a question. Did they address the 100-year flood elevation? I guess, what was that based on? Which FEMA map? Was it a more recent one, or? Because a lot of FEMA maps were recently
Is it in the notes?
updated in 2016 and 17.
When does the ZBA meet next? It's November 19th.
November 19th.
So we have another meeting before
That's what I'm
then.
saying. I mean, we have time.
Okay.
We have another meeting before then, so we don't have to like,
So maybe we start just I would say let's just add
I
some.
think we're,
you
yeah.
So
know, I think. I mean,
The
just-
resource
just-
areas are very important on here,
Yeah.
exactly what you're
Yeah.
getting at.
And is this
We don't
gonna, are we
know.
gonna have more information by the 14th? Erica?
the only thing that will likely happen before the next ZBA meeting is a working session between Horsley Witten and Duchamp Mendoza, which I'd like to attend with them. That's the only thing that would probably, so new information may come from that.
On wetland delineation?
It's both, because
Yeah.
Horsley Witten did a review of the wetland and they did a review of
This
just
is-
the overall project. Do you want to see that, or were you looking for it?
I was looking just for the personal FEMA map. Send in that,
It could be in here.
I mean,
But I
I think
can-
that back on the technical side for a second, I think the units 7 and 8, do we need roof runoff captured and instead of allowing it to run down?
I think it's going into, oh no, sorry, that's a proposed well.
That's a proposed well, that's a retaining wall, and that's wetlands.
Technically, roof runoff is considered clean under the Massachusetts State Stormwater Standards, so it's, that doesn't mean, so that would meet the water quality, but it wouldn't necessarily meet your peak rates, but I would assume that they took that into account, that this area is not going into here.
Okay.
So, it would be, something to look in the detailed, calcs to see that, I mean, my guess is they're probably still meeting your peak rates.
So one thing that Grizzly was recommended as an LID practice was to disconnect the roof runoff.
And to put it
They
in
recommend,
dry.
I mean, they can't require them to do it, but
Yeah.
they did recommend it, so.
So what's our bylaw for structures to wetlands?
What do you mean?
Distance.
Distance from wetland line?
So there's a 20, well, I know the local is no disturb 25 foot.
Because they're violating that here, right?
No,
they're
no,
just
no, the
within
wetlands,
The wetlands.
the wetlands, the green.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah, this is the
This-
buffer
this
This is the
zone.
bucket. this is
That's
the-
the,
Oh, that's
the
buffer.
that's the
bucket.
floodline,
Yeah.
floodline,
Okay.
so that doesn't have any jurisdiction with regard to
Okay.
Yeah, but you can see if that line moves
Yeah.
very much, it's,
Yeah, they're close.
Yeah.
What is that? It's like 20 feet?
Well, the flood line would only move if the FEMA maps, if they didn't reference the more recent FEMA maps. So that's why I was just trying to quickly see, just like, if we don't have to look at it tonight, but it's something we should check
We
to
could
see.
even just add it and just say that, you know.
Yeah, just,
yeah.
Well, I think, you know, maybe we should push this off to,
Yeah, we can add, we can,
Let's, let's get
if there's any.
more.
yeah, I know this.
Just a point of clarification on the old order of conditions, and I know you guys know it was originally obviously a single-family home versus the 8 units they're proposing now. But also, the area of work that is proposed on the current proposal is 5,000 feet greater than what was approved on the order of conditions in 2015. So
Right, yes.
they're looking to expand where they're going to be working. Even though they've made the lawyer has made the case a few times that, oh, we're within that similar parameter, and I guess maybe similar is a subjective term,
But they need to file a brand, are they filing
Exactly.
a brand new notice of intent, or are they filing an amended?
they haven't yet as far as natural heritage is concerned, or DEP, or Concom.
I think
but
they have to.
They have
because
to, yeah.
That, they're not exempt from. They're not exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act, because that's a state regulation. So while they may be exempt from the local
Right.
bylaws and
Yeah,
stuff like
no,
that,
it's
they
good.
have to meet that. And I believe the same thing is with natural heritage, and there are endangered species, that there's a whole
Exactly.
thing.
But they've said a couple of times, oh, you know, we've gotten this verbal approval because we're keeping the footprint the same, and it indeed is changed. So just to be aware of, it's right around that
Yeah,
acre
so-
threshold. It went from 40,000 to 45,000. So I don't know what rules and regs fall into place if it goes over your acre lot, but I know that's a threshold for certain things. And so I just want to make sure you're aware of the fact that that number's moving per conversations that are happening in town.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they would have to file either amended order of conditions, which is almost like a brand new order of conditions. It's just they're amending the old one, but they have to re-notify abutters, they have to go through, still have a public
Okay.
hearing process, and then to get their limit of work. Anytime you increase your limit of work towards the wetlands, you have to have Concom approval on that.
Right.
Or they just file a brand new notice of intent.
Yeah,
They
originally
could-
they talked
could do
about
that.
filing a whole new one.
Yeah,
But
which-
maybe they're, you know, maybe that's changed, I don't know.
It would kind of make sense, because it's changed, I think.
When we do a traditional subdivision plan, do we exclude wetlands from the calculation on siting houses? Like, so when you come up with the number of houses you can fit on the land, does it exclude wetlands?
Well,
Or is
yeah, I
that-
mean, they can't build within a wetland area.
Well,
so-
but I'm saying, like, for instance,
Size
Sidemore
lot.
came up with 11 houses. If, say, half of that was wetlands, could it still be 11 houses? Do you know what I'm saying? Or is it
No,
only
you
what?
have-
No,
you
no,
have
they
to-
have
you
to
have
show
to-
them the conventional.
You have to show the
you can
convention
have-
that you can still meet it, so
Yes,
you
it-
do have to take into account the wetland area. That's
Okay,
non-buildable
Yeah,
area.
you have to show that there's septic locations.
Yeah,
and
that's
all
right,
sets
that's
of-
right, yeah.
So that is taken into account.
So really on the 2.9 acres, you could fit one house, you know? So it's part of our conclusion, that we say if we recommend it, don't recommend it, you know? It's just too much built.
I don't know, could you fit by right 2 houses on that?
No, I said one.
Oh, one.
Yeah, I did,
One house. It's 2.9 acres.
Yes, you can. You
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
How much frontage do
I think it's significant.
Yes.
I don't remember.
And even if you squeaked it up to
you have? That's what I was
two.
just wondering,
Two,
maybe you
yeah.
could, I don't know, you'd need to.
But what I'm saying is, if we do add, so if we draft this as having all these points with the changes we made, and then say in conclusion, based on the fact that, you know, our standard zoning, I mean, we just, you know, the plan board goes, our standard zoning would allow 2 at most, that, you know, we don't feel that.
And this is.
We don't feel like
so
this should be
4 times
recommended.
as much.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's way overbuilding this land, and and we recommend that the ZBA doesn't approve it.
I mean, we can compare it to the other 40 Bs in town and their
Yeah.
densities, and this, you know, I think far exceeds probably the other
Right.
developments.
Yeah.
It's compounded with all of the environmental resources.
Yeah.
that
Be-
are on,
Because
so-
if the ZBA does disapprove it, or whatever, you know, if they don't allow it, it's gonna go to the state, right? So we need to create some type
Yeah,
of
the
argument.
Housing Appeals Committee.
Yeah, so, you know, this could be part of the argument, and then Concom's decision, or, you know, notes could be part of the argument.
I mean, basically, if the ZBA chooses to deny the permit, I mean, they have to show that local concern far exceeds the need for affordable housing, so it would have to be a really strong argument to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, you know,
I mean,
We're
this is
not
a
the
very-
final
this
say.
is a very sensitive, you know, environmentally sensitive.
yeah,
setting,
we're not the
so-
final say, but, you know, we can recommend, if the ZBA has, you know, other voices saying that, you know, we stand behind, if you're thinking of going this way, we stand behind you, then, you know,
So why don't I take the comments that you guys had tonight, I'll add them in, and then we can finish it up at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Does that work?
yeah.
Okay.
Could we post the draft on the planning site too, so people can get a look at it?
I could, yeah, sure, if you want to.
Yeah. So that on the planning board section of the town website, we can post a draft of this.
Is Horsley Witten's report is also on that site at
It's
this
on
point?
the ZBA's webpage.
On ZBA's, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, man, get a date.
Or what?
I'll look it up.
We're ready.
All right, yeah, we're running pretty late, so I think we're gonna close that conversation, but
Quick question? Joe Petrella from Barnhill Road. Are duplexes allowed in Bolton? Duplex houses, are they allowed in Bolton?
no.
Someone said that they
Under
weren't
under
allowed.
local, no, under 40B, that could be
Yeah.
waived.
Yeah.
And then, if they do the overflow for the storm drain, is that gonna be outside the scope of work area for the overflow? I mean, how big does the overflow need to be, Claire? Is that outside the scope of work, more towards into the wetlands, or?
Well, typically, it would just be a structure that you know, you've got your subsurface system, everything
Yeah.
below ground. It would be a structure that has a weir in it, so it's gonna, you know, be designed as it normally would be, but if you had a large storm, it would fill up, it'd go over the weir, and you just have a pipe that
Okay.
would be discharged wherever it can
Discharged.
daylight.
Right, yeah.
Probably upgrading of the wetland.
Okay.
So it'd be towards the wetland, because that's where your discharge point is now. But
Okay.
it would be upgrading of that, so the intent is to keep it on site within the wetland area and not allow it to get out into the road, or through that. But, I mean, obviously they're trying to infiltrate it, put it into the ground, that's the best thing that can be done. But if you did have a large storm, it provides just some relief, so it doesn't bubble up and go
Prevents it
that
from
way.
backflowing towards the
Yeah.
road.
Because I did the post in my yard, I'm the butter on Barnhill Road.
Yeah.
And I had put posts in for signs for turtles to migrate through. And up down 2.5 feet, I was on my backside of the property towards their property, and I hit water 2.5 feet when I was doing my 3-foot holes for the posts. So the water level is really high there, and we're just concerned with the water flow and how much water is saturated. Now, when they build up on the sump system, they can't build up in the wetlands, can they?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Can they build up in the wetlands
No.
when they want to raise all the levels up for the system and stuff? They can't build up the wetlands,
They
right?
can't touch the
Wetlands
wetlands
at all.
without altering, I mean, without going to the Concom. I mean, it doesn't look like they're looking to alter the wetlands at all.
When they're saying something about the storm basin, or every foot they take, they gotta fix another foot of wetland or something?
Nope, so what that is borderland subject to flooding, and that's your
Okay.
100-year flood elevation. So
Okay.
they are, and that's a certain elevation, and I think it's 229. So what it is they're filling below 229, so they're
Okay.
taking up flood storage that's naturally there. So they're gonna compensate over here, so they're gonna basically dig a hole, I don't want, you know, it's not really
Right.
digging a hole, but they're digging out earth here because they're filling over here. So they're compensating and they have to compensate that on a foot-by-foot basis.
Right.
So that's for the Concom regulations. So they are meeting that. I just wanted to double check the flood elevation because FEMA has updated their maps recently, and if they are using the latest one, that's great.
Okay.
Just.
Okay.
You guys got an
We gotta
email,
move on.
sent an email about, you know, everything that happened, and you actually know that they mowed the meadow before November 1st. That was the date. They couldn't mow the meadow from November 1st until March 31st. They mowed it 2 weeks ago without permission. It was,
So.
and then they actually mowed onto my property also.
And it's during their
Oh.
meeting season.
Is that something Concom can enforce?
Well, I mean, I talked to Jesse Ledeck today, well, actually talked to Melanie Cheeseman, and they're aware of it, but they're not going to, they said, it was a mistake, so they're not going to pursue any fines at this
Who are
point.
they?
Melanie Cheeseman from
National Heritage.
Natural Heritage. And they actually went, I marked my property, they actually went 20 feet onto my property and mowed my property also. They went up to the tree line at the back of their lot, so they don't even know where their property is basically, because they, so I think if Bouchon Bills, if they do any site work there, they should shoot a line on that to see where the property actually ends, because they said they mowed up to the tree line, which is 20 feet onto my property.
Okay, well, we'll continue discussing
Okay.
this next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you.
You're gonna get some room here, Eileen.
Okay, I was hoping to get road.
So, does somebody else?
This will be a general discussion whether or not we'll go to the next meeting. And so in your packet, is an email from Fred Hanway and an email from DPW, sort of outlining the requirements that the board uses to allow for extension. And so as of today, we've received some text from John, from 649 Main and from Tadmore, and I anticipate any request from East Water, so.
So,
And of course, then
yeah.
CMU will jump on the bandwagon too.
I mean, honestly, to be fair, if we're granted for one, we should.
That's why it should be.
I mean,
I have a
it's-
small comment based on that.
Okay.
Well, only that my common drive is a private project, whereas I think some of the others are town-managed public ways. I believe this could be
No, they're
different.
not town,
Future.
they're not town-owned yet. They're future town.
But paving.
Oh, I see, I get where you're going, I get where you're going, 'cause it's,
So.
it's always gonna be a
I'm not really-
private.
Well, I think it's
Okay.
legit, I'm not really
what you're
splitting
saying.
hairs, but one is a private driveway.
Yeah,
One of these proposals happens to be mine, or discussion's a private driveway, with the owners of the driveway absorbing any and all responsibility for the project, whereas the others are public projects, which I think,
Well,
the
so,
public project, yeah, but will be.
I mean, we're dealing with another common driveway where, you know, similar type situation.
Late and it's.
Yeah, where they paid late and it's been an issue, so we're trying to protect the residents as well.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I understand. But,
So this is what Fred says about it.
Yeah.
Regarding the possible extension of paving beyond November 15th, the following should be considered. No pavement mix shall be placed on wet or damp surfaces. Pavement mix shall only be placed when temperatures are 40 degrees and rising. Seam temperature becomes very important for roadways. The pavement would normally be placed along one half of the roadway width for the entire length of the roadway. Then the remaining, so he's just talking about the seam. I don't know if I want to read all this. So he's just talking about the seam temperatures,
But if
it's
it's,
using them and everything, yeah.
if it's wide, but I'm not sure a driveway would have that issue.
Yeah, this means that each half of the roadway,
Depends, I guess, on the full, what would be the full length.
yeah.
Well,
yeah,
if you-
12
if
foot,
you've got a
12 foot
12
wide, we can pave in one shot, so.
No,
yeah.
it's-
Oh, so you don't have that issue,
Yeah,
okay.
You don't have
yeah.
the seam issue, but
Yeah.
And
Yeah, this would not apply to the 12-foot driveway width.
Okay.
taking into account all of Fred's comments, my thought is that any paving that we would attempt, weather permitting, beyond the 15th would, by nature of the process, be with Fred's approval, because Fred's involved in literally every inch of a project like this.
Yeah. Well,
So my thought for discussion is there room, in conjunction with your consulting engineer's approval, weather permitting, to have some flexibility in the November 15th date?
yeah,
That's-
I mean,
that's my-
in the
And I
past,
can't address a road. I'm
in the
talking
past, if it's
about my driveway.
a few nice days, it's not gonna be raining, I mean, we have approved it.
I see, I mean, I deal with this all the time. you know,
I may beat it,
projects,
I may beat it,
so.
but I may not.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, and it's just, we've had a really rainy, I empathize because we've had a lot of rainy days. I've been on the soccer field a lot in the rain. But, I mean, again, yeah, we've had really warm Novembers and Decembers before too, where it does allow.
Yes, and we've also
Contractors to go
lost
out.
the whole thing and shut it down
Yeah,
a week early.
yeah,
So
so-
every year's different.
Yeah,
and-
I mean, I have no problems allowing the extension past November 15th, as long as it meets the temperature requirements. You know, Fred's gonna be there to inspect it.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, making sure that it's not being on a damp surface. That would be.
Martha?
Martha Remington, Main Street. Will the road in the Fosbergs be town roads, or is there some kind of an association?
There's town roads.
Yeah,
those-
Okay.
They have to be accepted.
Except for 649 Main Street,
Yeah.
that's a common driveway,
Yeah.
even though it is
Yeah. Okay.
technically a.
Well, no, the main portion coming into it
No, it's gonna
would be town, then the one going off of it
No,
would
I'm
be
gonna
town.
get Tadmore.
Okay, sorry, totally getting mixed up, sorry.
I think with the cold and the rain, I mean, I'm not an asphalt professional, but I did go online and look at some things. It says the ideal temperature for laying asphalt is 70 degrees.
You can do it, I mean,
The
anything,
town will be assuming these roads.
not
Not
this
this one,
one.
not this one.
Right,
But
not
Fosford,
three,
yeah,
not
yeah.
339.
Oh, you're talking about the ones for phosphorus?
Right, that's
Yeah,
private.
Yeah.
Anything that the town is going to assume, I mean, if it's compromised by cold and rain, that means the town is going to be,
Oh, yeah,
up to having
absolutely,
to take
getting
care of
an
it.
inferior product, I
And-
100%, I'll say, I mean, to lay it less than 70 degrees is completely normal. I mean, typically, the MassDOT standards, I think, are actually 50. I don't think they're 40, so we might want to just look at that. I thought it was 50 degrees by the MassDOT standards.
and it's also important what the temperature of the asphalt is coming off the truck, too.
Yes,
So, I
yep,
mean,
it
that's
has to be a
just another
certain
thing.
temperature. Yeah, and usually
So,
you would have an inspector.
Why tempt fate? So that the town's gonna have to assume these earlier than
Well,
you would.
I think you can still,
If it was private,
Wait.
fine, but these are gonna be public roads. It's like the drains, the drainage grates all around town, over in Kettle.
well, I'm not suggesting that
They were inferior when they were built, and the town has spent so much money rebuilding them because,
Yeah, I guess I'm not suggesting we accept anything that's inferior or allow anything that's inferior to be installed. What I would allow is what follows the procedures of the MassDOT, Mass DOT standards for asphalt application of what they allow. And they do allow installations past November 15th if they meet a certain temperature weather-wise, which I think it's 50 degrees, not 40. We should,
Yeah, I think Fred Hamway told me that MassDOT actually took the temperatures out.
oh, they did.
I saw 40 online, but
Oh, maybe it is 40. I can't
I'll
remember.
double check.
But, and it has to be dry, the pavement can't be wet. You do have to take a temperature of the asphalt as it's coming out of the truck to make sure it hasn't cooled a lot. So there are certain standards that need to be done, that I think probably if Fred is involved, he's looking at all of these things to make sure it's being installed. So I'm not saying any of that stuff should be changed, but if you can meet all those requirements after November 15th, I would be okay with that to allow it to be installed at a different date. But I certainly wouldn't want it to be done in an inferior, not meeting one of those.
just
So-
one other quick comment.
Hold on just a second. So on our problematic common drive, Fred oversaw that as well. But I think it started, the temperature was okay, and then it dropped during the day
When
unexpectedly.
it started misting.
And then it started misting, so you're definitely,
You put Fred Hamway in a difficult position sometimes by allowing for the extensions. I would agree to that.
Well, had I attempted to pave 5 years ago, unrelated to the date, it would have been different. We woke up, it's 25 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
Yeah, but
there's
Fred's
always,
also
there's
monitoring.
right, there's always a judgment call. I don't want to. And was the problem with the misting, was that a top coat or the base coat? Because the base coat's pretty impervious to rain.
It was the top coat.
It was a top, yeah.
Yeah, top coat's a whole different animal.
It was the top
And
coat.
we are fully prepared for the eventuality that we don't make a top coat, but the base coat is a different issue.
And the other issue.
And I would defer to Fred's advice on that.
So
as
you're
well.
looking to, for an extension?
We would love to do both, but we would certainly settle for base coat. It's a game changer for the viability of the driveway through the winter.
Yeah.
and the further we go into the season,
Yep.
the possibility for freezing, that plays into it as well.
Absolutely, but in my tender years, I've also observed winters where we have lovely, awesome weather right up through Christmas.
Yeah.
So I would simply ask for some judgment on the part of the board to happen. should
Yeah,
we
I
go
think the
with this.
November 15th date is kind of a date where they say, you know, before it, go for it, but before it, make a judgment call. I mean, that's kind of, it's not like a, you know, that's it, it's done, in my opinion. You know, if it's gonna be a couple weeks of nice weather and,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't go beyond December 1st, maybe, I don't even know when the asphalt plants will stay open anyway,
December
but,
1st.
It changes every year.
It changes every year, I was just gonna say, it's
Yeah,
all,
it's a matter of how long people are still being
Yeah.
allowed to, I mean, and if you look at Joe's comments, talks about you not wanting, you know, frost in the ground.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, so,
so
do we require frost-free night before, you
So,
know?
are we looking for a vote here, what do we have to do?
Yeah,
For this one in particular, or all of them?
I think is the board gonna weigh in generally, saying whether or not, you know, projects under construction that are looking to, you know, do pavement, whether or not they can,
I think we should look at it still on a case-by-case basis, no?
I think we kind of have to look at it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what, general?
Yeah, I mean, why would we allow one developer to pay
Well-
beyond November?
well, I think.
I think Foster
There's-
versus
I- I-
common
I
driveway.
stand on that
have-
ground.
yeah, I
It's
think-
private-
I think
private
there's-
and public are different.
We look at it with regard to, is it private or public?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. yeah.
Still could be problematic though,
I
as
think,
we've seen
I mean,
with Long Hill.
Yeah.
and either way, there's gonna be a base coat on all these, then you'll come back with a top coat, right?
Yeah,
on
I- I-
any of
I-
them.
These
So-
are all
so-
talking binder, none of them are
Okay.
talking top coat at this point.
Yeah, they just wanna get the binder done before the winter.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I have a silly question. I'm here because of Fred's recommendations. Does my common driveway agreement say, call out the November 5th, 15th date? What if it doesn't? But I'm leaving. But I'm working on,
Isn't it in a
because in a site
bylaws?
visit, and on Monday, Fred said, you better go check with the planning board, because they might not let you take till 15. I guess I
That's
should
our
reread my.
standard.
I thought we put it in there.
I think it's, yeah, I
Is it in
think
there?
it's a
It's
standard.
protocol,
Martha?
I just have a comment about the waiver you gave Mr. Pace at Keys Farm.
Do we give
The
away?
extra Saturdays they work means we now have Jake breaks Monday through Saturday until that is done. I know it
He's
has
not
nothing
working
to do
He's
anymore.
with
not working on
me.
Saturdays anymore.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
done.
taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
you're a meeting behind.
Well, they were working last Saturday.
We gave him last Saturday because that was, no, not last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago.
2 Saturdays.
Right.
That was,
Right.
that was the last
That's the last
Saturday they were
one, yeah.
allowed to work.
Oh, I thought it went into November.
It originally
Oh,
went
because
into
the
November
abutters
10th, but we took it away last meeting.
Okay, sorry about that. I mean, I was regretting that you had extended that because what a mess. The noise was
Yeah, no, we-
unbelievable.
Can we say, all right, let's say this. For common driveways, for binder, not top coat. As long as the temperature and stuff meets Fred Hanway's thing, we can allow that.
I'm
Until
okay,
December
yeah, I'm
1st?
okay
Till
with
December 1st.
making a motion to allow
Binder. not top
binder to
coat.
be installed after November 15th, as long as it meets the temperature and weather requirements for asphalt installation.
Do you wanna say for
Could-
common driveways
could I-
versus?
Having
Of course
lived
you
through
want.
several very accommodating falls, does the board have the ability to say paving? Because if.
Oh, because if you can get a top coat, excuse me, a
if-
top coat in there?
If it's 55 for a week and a
And you
half, I'm gonna be right back in here saying,
Yeah, I want to
can
get
we
the,
do
I want to
mine?
get it done.
So, I mean, is
Well,
it
I think
ethical
we were
to
doing a
say
general,
paving?
I think we were doing a general thing here. And let's do
So-
it safe. Let's get you some binder.
I don't see, I don't know. I don't see.
Well,
a reason
the other
not to.
point that I try to keep money out of discussions, but I represent my clients here, which is a private party, not a developer. And they have a considerable amount of money tied up in this driveway. And so I have to represent that viewpoint, that if we can safely, with sound engineering practices, complete this driveway, that frees up a measurable percentage of the cost of this project.
Yeah, but if you put the binder down, I mean, top just waits till the spring, how's that?
I have never asked for money for advances from the planning board, and I know that there were some issues this year where the planning board is not eager to free up money. So I'm just representing my clients, and they have a lot of money involved. And if I can ethically complete my driveway, I'd like to not walk out of the meeting having prohibited that by a couple of words in the agreement. So my proposal, and it's just a proposal, we use the word pavement instead of binder. The whole place could freeze up next week, and then it's all academic. But if it's a balmy year, I would like, engineering-wise, if it's cleared, to be able to complete the driveway. So what would I?
I would suggest really an air of caution. I would allow for the binder, but not for the top coat
That's
at
okay.
present. And
Yeah.
then if we do end up having a really mild winter coming back,
Yeah.
and talking about it then.
I think
I'm
so.
gonna wear shorts to the next meeting.
So say
So be it.
for common driveways and binder. Can we do
That
that?
includes 649 Main Street.
Yeah.
Just remember, it wouldn't just be for Long Hill,
Right.
it would be
Yeah.
for that development.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So, because the common driveways don't come under ownership of the town.
The town, yeah.
Yeah, it's typically a smaller,
And
All right, so that goes on.
and binder only,
yeah,
Yeah.
binder only.
I mean, I would have been okay with the top coat, but, that's, yes, so that's my motion, right? I approve a motion to allow binder to be installed after November 15th up to December 1st. As long as it meets the appropriate weather and temperature requirements for asphalt installation, and Fred Hamway is reviewing, it, or is
On board.
on board
yeah.
For common
With-
driveways,
for common
Hamway
driveways.
approval.
Yeah.
I second that.
all in favor?
I,
Okay.
And if we do
Now-
have a very balmy
do we
fall,
Come back,
Perhaps we'll meet again.
Come back.
I
on
guess,
the first.
do we
Yeah.
want to address the phosphorus ones, or just leave it at common driveways?
Just leave it there for now because we're behind schedule. And we have
And they-
people here.
But they've submitted requests, or no?
They have, I mean, we can talk about it at the next meeting. I mean, we are running behind schedule significantly, so why don't we
Okay,
talk
and they
about
didn't,
it?
and no one showed up for them anyway.
I didn't tell them that they needed to, I said that the board would have a general discussion about paving extensions. But if the board wants them to show up, I mean, I got these requests last minute, so it's not like, you know,
Okay.
they asked 2 weeks ago and it was.
Well, we'll see how the next 2 weeks go and
Yeah,
go from there.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right,
Get more attention if you show up.
you do, you definitely get more attention.
All right, sorry for being so late. Next, we're gonna discuss affordable housing bylaw. So we have Mark, Megan, Kevin, Jennifer, Colleen, Annie, and, I'm sure, who's that? I don't know.
It's Sterling.
Oh, it's Sterling, okay, sorry. I know I've seen you around
Way
town.
back.
I know you fix computers.
Way back. I do that.
Sorry.
For seniors,
Huh?
for seniors.
Yes, yes.
So I guess in general, you know, everybody knows our situation about affordable housing in town. We're at 3%, which, you know, we just talked about Still River, so we have no control over our destiny of, you know, we want affordable and we like, you know, we want to add to the town, but we want to have it under our control and not necessarily in sensitive areas, and be at the mercy, you know, have it out of our hands. So, a couple of things, you know. First of all, being only at 3%, that's the case. And the bylaw that I want to discuss also will add in our drastic need for senior housing. So combining those two things up, I think, is would be really great for Bolton to add affordable housing, because we all know that the cottage overlay failed last year. That necessarily wasn't going to give seniors housing, and it wasn't necessarily affordable. They were very large. So I think what I would like to focus on as a town is to add, you know, it'd be great to have it be 100% count towards SHI. You know, so if it's rentals, that's the case. And have actual smaller units that seniors can afford and units that they could be happy with, and not necessarily larger 2,400 square foot units that we were talking about with the cottage overlay. We have a couple of bylaws that we're looking at, one from Littleton and Granby, and there was one other town, so I guess, so I asked all these people to come to discuss, you know, how this bylaw would look if developers would build it, how the state will qualify it, if it'll be approved as to count towards our affordable, and this would be part of our overall housing production plan, which we're working on in parallel. And I think this would be a key piece, because if we could add 40 units, you know, of affordable senior housing, which, and that's the other question is, can we, I don't think we can, I've heard two ways, I'm not sure we can exactly specify it as senior housing, just design it to fit the senior lifestyle, and kind of if you build it, they will come type situation.
Yeah, I think we don't want to make it age restricted.
Right,
That's
we don't
what
want to
we
make age
discussed.
restricted, yeah. Because maybe
But still-
a single person out of college wants to move in
Yeah.
and have, you know, a studio type apartment, and that would be fine. I don't know if it would be acceptable to the state to require a certain, if say a certain percentage is set aside for seniors. I don't know all those laws, so, you know, stuff we can look into.
I had a question, because I went to the affordable with you,
Yeah.
the affordable housing presentation that was given last week. And it was mentioned that the town of Lincoln meets their requirement, and that they did it in a way that they wanted to. How, it wasn't really kind of gone into detail there, but how did they meet it? Or anyone, just
Well, I
anyone
think
know?
they put, sorry, Penny. I think they put years ago, I mean, this is like
Yeah.
years ago, Center. they put
Yeah.
apartments. If you go through Lincoln, cross the tracks, the cut through, you go, you know, across the tracks and up, and you end up at Four Corners, or Kelly Corner. There's a whole bunch of apartments, affordable apartments, and they can walk to the train station.
Yeah.
So it's worked out really well, and it's been full, I think, most of the time.
Because that was a comment that was made.
But that was done, yeah,
Ages
20 or 30 years
No, I
ago.
know, but it was just, it was a comment that the town said, okay, we want to make this work, we want to meet the 10%, we want to, you know, be, you know, there, and they put forth something to get it done, rather than just trying to, I guess, piecemeal it, and maybe that's the wrong terminology here, but it struck me as, wow, okay, well, if they did that, then how could we do that?
Yeah.
So it's just one apartment complex is basically what they,
Well, I think we're at like 50 or 60, and we need to get to about 170. So it's a pretty big one development without piecemealing it. I mean, I guess it's possible, but.
yeah. I mean, if you were to find the right site,
Yeah,
that it could be,
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
don't know how they
sure with
did
that
that,
big an
but-
increase, you could do it in one site.
okay.
yeah.
No,
I
but
think you
at
have
the
to-
same time, if you put a number of
You
different
plan for it.
institutions
Yeah.
in different places, you could do it. You
Yeah.
could get there.
So, I mean, we have a lot of experienced people here, so I would love to maybe go through the audience and if you guys could give your thoughts on what I was saying.
Could we review perhaps the early 1990s HUD grant that got us the senior housing that we have today? Was that a one-time
Yes.
possibility?
Yeah.
Is there anything to go back to the well at this point?
Well, we had talked about doing a phase two, Kevin, remember, behind the senior?
Exactly.
Because that was town land, but that kind of got dropped, so.
Flatly?
Yeah, yeah, I know on our property, the
On our
town
property.
property, behind, you know, behind Flatley, more
Yeah.
behind this property, but that never,
Yeah, so my other thoughts were, do we do a bylaw? I like the idea of a bylaw to get the entire town behind it. Or do we do more of like an, you know, RFP type situation? Then it goes kind of to the ZBA, I guess, but the town kind of requests what they would like. And it's the question of where do we put it? We do have municipal land along 495 and, you know, behind, you know, along 495 and wrapping around the gardens and stuff, right?
Oh, where the wastewater treatment facility is?
Yeah.
for the-
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
So we have that, we own, so,
We
you
have a
know,
lot of
That's what
municipal land.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
we have municipal land there, we have
Yeah.
municipal land.
On Fort Bushmill
On
Road.
Fort Bushmill
we
Road.
have- It's,
So, I mean, the town could potentially offer up the land if, you know, as like enticing a developer, right?
yeah, I mean, Eileen,
Yes.
what was the process for doing Bolton Country Manor? So
If
did
we
we
had to-
give the land and then we
Yes.
partnered with the developer? Was it a
That's
comprehensive
exactly what we
permit?
did. We had the land first.
Uh-huh.
Kevin was involved too.
Yeah.
And then we had to do a lot of interviewing for a builder, an architect. It was a process, and it was through the ZBA.
So it was a comprehensive permit.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that, going through that process again?
Well,
If we could get a project that,
remember Wayne saying, oh my God, everybody from Dorchester is gonna move.
Yeah,
here."
I remember that.
So it was
I
like,
never lived down.
Yeah.
oh my
Moved out of
God,
town.
oh my God. But, no, and it was, but it was in motion for years before I got on the board.
That's why that's why I kind of think the bylaw is a better way to go, because I think it gets done faster, potentially.
I don't know. I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
not
think
really.
I don't know if you can pass the bylaw. I think you'd have to do it.
You have to pass the bylaw, but then a developer has to come forward to use it.
Yeah.
well, that's why
Yeah.
we're trying to make sure that what we're putting forth,
Yeah.
one, is it attractive to developers?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what we have so far just doesn't seem to be, we get some of the fees in lieu of, but we have very little of the actual units being
Yeah.
built and stuff like that. So we're trying to find something that's attractive.
Well, I had a developer that was interested in the Girl Scout land, and he was hoping to do senior housing there, but the cottage overlay went south.
Yeah.
It may be that if you try to combine affordable with market,
Well, Mark does that. I talked to Mark about it.
yeah, I mean, if you, I mean, there are a lot of seniors. Oh, 304 tax rate, over there, who at some point are really getting tired of shoveling their own snow.
Yeah.
And, but because we've lived here for 20 and 30
People
and
don't
40
wanna
years,
Right.
would really like to sort of stay around here and probably wouldn't necessarily need affordable housing once we dump our houses, but would like to stay in town at, you know,
I mean, senior housing.
as senior,
that would be,
not even, you know, yeah, a senior housing where we could stay in town. Young people, you know, could move into town, and if their parents wanted to be close, they could live there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, combine it with affordable housing, which might make it a lot more attractive to a developer if we help with the affordable side. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
And they go in and do the sort of market.
Mark does that.
I mean, that's really the basis of a 40B. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we've got for two examples of, like a Regency that was age-restricted, traditional 40B condominium project, where you've got market rate homes that are probably 500 now, which is the going rate, whether
Yeah.
everybody likes it or not. And you've got the affordable units, and then you've got the other alternative of Bolton Country Manor, which is, it's a very different product, I think, for a different group. The
Yeah,
hard
it is.
part,
That's
and
strictly
we
rental.
talked about it a little at that meeting, is that, that middle group for people that have a few bucks, but 500 is too much, but, it wouldn't qualify at affordable housing if you can find a way to get something in that 300,000 range, but it's the hard part. You can't produce it as a developer whether, without
You took it back.
subsidies. You just
You
can't do it.
need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need
It
help.
doesn't work.
Because when you build these.
Regardless of what the price of, I mean, obviously if the land is free and it's extremely inexpensive to develop but, most
problem-
of the good land is gone.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that was kind of a big point of that meeting.
Yeah.
Sure.
But my problem with that though is that we only get 25%. If there was, I think, who was the other developer there? Who was developing in Devon's where he said he had like
And Gainsborough,
he had like he did some market rate, but then he had like a 40-unit apartment
He had an
building.
apartment building that was
So
part
if-
of the master plan.
I mean, if we could get the number up to say 50%, that would count. 25% is like, it's tough to get to where you need to be if you're just doing 25%.
I understand, but it comes down to economics, and
Yeah.
if the town is willing to make an investment to help offset, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's land or certain
Well, that's what I was gonna
expenses,
say,
then-
so if we were to give the
then that's
land,
something.
that would be a huge enticement, right?
Yes.
It would help, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but you know, it all comes down to, you know, the overall scope of the project. Are you gonna do, you know, 1,500 square foot homes? Will people buy that for 300? And can you make those numbers work? And at 300, it's affordable to a lot more people,
Mhm.
but the town doesn't get any benefit towards your SHI.
Right.
So I think that's where it's hard of finding a mix of adding to the counts, but trying to serve a group of people that aren't being
I mean,
served.
that's why I was thinking kind of like 100% rental or even a
You do
majority rental.
Yeah, every
Yeah.
rental is,
Yeah.
every
You know, rental, they all count to the SHI.
Yeah, they all
So that, I mean,
I
the
mean,
rental is
that's where
viable,
me
yeah.
personally, I was leaning, was
Sure.
to do, you know, rental units.
I mean, Penny, where's the need in town when you're, you know, talking
Well,
to
I
council on
mean,
aging?
you can ask Eileen, I mean, there's a waiting list. We've got
For both
somebody in the
together,
senior
right?
housing only because they were homeless. We
You have
got
to
them
be
in.
homeless to get to the front of the
Let's
list.
get to the front of the list, so there's a waiting list that's probably 2, 3, 4 years
Oh,
long.
yeah, it's awful.
Oh
I
my
I know
What
that,
what
I
other-
know- I know
what
that
other rents
Ada would talk to
What?
me whenever
What?
she's,
What are the rents there? I'm sorry, I'm just
It's
curious.
based on their income,
It
they're
is
very
based on-
low.
It's based on
Okay,
their
so
income,
that's-
yeah.
It's a HUD project.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I
No
know
other
that-
rents it.
Ada would always come and talk to me about, you know, especially when we're doing the cottage overlay, saying this is not for seniors, what you're, you know, working on here, so.
But why can't you do a project with both?
That's what I think. I think that's what you need to do, because I think you leave out a huge portion. I mean, I probably am not gonna go live in senior housing.
Yeah.
I can afford more.
So you would want more of like a cottage type unit?
Yeah,
So you're saying rentals with
Yeah,
home ownership?
Yeah.
Both?
yeah, why don't you do both?
yeah, why not?
Do developers do both? Is that something?
You can, it's, you know, in a sense, you have, you know, multiple lots that can be developed together, so you can have, you know, one lot per se that is, you know, rental based, and then some attached homes around it and share some infrastructure.
Well,
It's complicated, but
the
it's
big
it's
unit
doable.
being, the big unit being discussed in Lancaster is,
Oh, that's huge.
I mean, I know it's huge, but it is some single family houses and then some apartments, right?
Yeah, the one on Sterling Road,
Yeah.
I believe
I
so.
mean,
Oh,
from
yeah.
a sale point of view, you know, with everybody working, every couple working, they need, grandparents are, you know, that's what we do. We look after grandchildren, you know, that's our job. But if you can bring them closer, and they live here,
Yeah.
and they could get their parents closer, so they didn't have to drive an hour,
Yeah.
but could live here in what they thought was a nice place.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm open to whatever we can get built, pretty much. You know, whatever you guys think is doable, whether it's, you know, 50% apartments and 50%, you know, 50%,
Yeah, I guess-
cottage.
but you get into the apartments, you're gonna get into sewage treatment plant, right, Mark?
You will.
Yeah,
You get
for sure.
very-
Yeah.
You'll
Very
definitely-
quickly,
Yeah.
you get into
You'll be within
community water
10,000 gallons.
supplies.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the biggest issues here is we just don't have the infrastructure.
Right,
I
that's why
mean, I mean,
Lancaster is viable, they've
Yeah.
got water sewer there.
Yeah.
No, Clinton doesn't wanna give them sewer.
Oh, well, it's in the streets, that's all I know.
Yeah.
They gotta get it.
Whether they have it, I don't know, but
Clinton doesn't
I,
have enough for them.
yeah, I think there was a project that was approved there before that it had got an
Same
agreement
problem.
for it, so, but I don't remember.
Mary Trumeau Corn Road, Anthem Village in South Acton. That's it's affordable housing. They also preserve 2 historic houses, and actually 3 historic structures in the process. And it seems that it's a combination of detached and attached units. Now, I'm assuming they're all going to be sold and not rental, you know, a combo, but that's something to look into.
Yeah, that's a traditional 40B, so 25% affordability.
Yeah.
And the market rates there are going for 6 to 850 probably. Just to put it in perspective.
That's
So,
active.
and it's a very nice property, but it's not inexpensive.
Well, I guess the question is, I mean, you know, we're here, you know, you brought up the bylaw, you know, do we do the bylaw, or is it more of, does the town come up with land? I mean, is it possible to do both, or just, I mean, it doesn't sound like we're hearing you know, both options seem like they could be viable, but we don't know with certain things, so should we still consider going forward with the bylaw, but also looking at these other things? I guess I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand
I
what maybe.
I mean, I think we should go forward with the bylaw. I think a lot of the, I think there's a lot of talk about affordable, and especially now with everybody being so concerned about 40Bs being, you know, like yours is a good location, but, you know, this 40B is gonna be popping up in locations that aren't necessarily desirable for that type of development. You know, so I think people are concerned about that. I think people are concerned about potentially losing a big business property to a 40B. And everybody wants to help seniors, I would hope. So, and the seniors definitely need, you know, some more options to stay within town. So, and then the other concerns for the cottage overlay were water concerns, so that's something we'll have to add in, you know, studies or whatever. We'll have to address it somehow.
What were the water concerns?
That as it gets developed, you're drawing down from adjacent homeowners. Now, I know that, you know, any type of groundwater well system has to be done to meet the Board of Health or DEP. But those were the concerns that were brought up at town meeting.
Well, and also, so for citing the cottage overlay, we said any property over 10 acres. So people said, well, it could show up anywhere in town, and there was concerns about that, you know, so maybe if we did a more concentrated placement spot, you know, the municipal land, you know, along 495, and not that they want to build along 495, but, you know, that land is the Forbush Mill. Where else is municipal land?
Yeah, quite a bit. I think for the next meeting I can come up with that.
Yeah, so maybe we just say municipal land, I don't know.
I think we want to select the, you know, the exact parcels that we want.
Yeah, just like we did with the solar as of right. Yeah, just select municipal land, and then just, I think you just,
But so you're selecting the parcels you want to do for this?
So are you saying
Yeah.
that the town would give them the land?
yeah.
So it'd be-
Municipal
So it's
land.
sort of a mix between an
Yeah.
RFP and a bylaw then, so
They-
it's like,
yeah.
you're not necessarily,
You're-
which is not a bad thing, I think
Yeah.
that might be a good way to go,
Yeah.
because then we're not having to front the money really,
Yeah,
but we're giving them land.
that's like the carrot, it's like, here's the land.
Here's the land, now build us our affordable.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But I guess I'm confused. Were you saying, so this,
Well, we'd have to, you know, change that drastically, but,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
That was just, you know, an example, Littleton's.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
We have, we have Littleton's recent bylaw, we have, and the reason why I was bringing up Littleton's is because, they, you know, they didn't specify age brackets and seniors, they designed it to fit the senior lifestyle, but if other people wanna move in, that was fine too. That was the other thing we heard from people, is that they didn't like it restricted to over 55, because people wanna live with people of all ages,
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
wanna necessarily. Yeah.
It's having diversity is a good thing.
Exactly.
As the old saying goes, it's hanging around with you kiddos that keeps us young.
Yeah.
Is there any downside to just going ahead with the bylaw and that affects?
No, and
anything else?
that's what I was thinking.
I mean, I'm
it
just wondering if
seems-
there's no downside to affecting anything else, why not go ahead with it?
I don't think so. I guess it's more of just how do we, you know, how do we structure the bylaw
Yeah.
to get it passed
To
town
get what we
meeting?
want, but to also entice the developer to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and that's what we wanna.
I think the bylaw, getting the town behind it, because if we do the RFP, then you have people like, oh, well, you're trying to sneak this through ZBA, or, you know, if you get the town on board, you know, and get the town behind it, and that's probably, you know, favorable to a developer as well, not having to fight through a ZBA and, you know, neighbors that aren't happy about it, you know, where it's cited, if you know, if we can get it through,
Yeah.
if we can get it through town meeting, just like we did the solar as of right, you know, not that it's come of anything yet, but.
And if you're looking for, but if you're looking to use town-owned land, I wouldn't connect the two. You have town-owned land, if you do a review of your parcels and make a decision that we've got 2 or 3 parcels that we wanna look at and evaluate and see what makes sense, you can kinda do that by itself. I mean, I would look at the bylaw as something that would be used, you know, that it would be applicable everywhere,
That's what I was thinking,
or at
yeah.
whatever the parameters are. I don't think I would look at using the bylaw in relation to town-owned property. But I think having a bylaw, that's viable, that people can have as an alternative for, a development alternative is a great idea.
Yeah.
But then you're deciding where you want to put it, what the parameters are.
I'm
and all
just
that
thinking
stuff.
getting it
But-
through town meeting, people envisioning kind of where it would go is easier than it could go anywhere.
Well, I think you can do a scenario of, this is what it would look like on a given property, but that's just.
Martha?
Yes, Martha Remington, Main Street. I think it's important that if we're thinking senior housing, we need to think senior center as well. Because we're really lagging for towns in getting a senior center. And it could be an opportunity to have both at the same time, with senior housing, affordable housing, and finally a space for senior
Yeah,
center.
for sure, yeah.
And combine that with a community center.
I think you should have a community, if you're gonna
I
do
think
something
you do.
for seniors, you should do
You
something
combine
for
it.
the kids.
It's the only real one.
Jennifer, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, a couple things. So I'm Jennifer Van Kippen, Executive Director of Metro West Collaborative Development, and we are actually consultant to the town of Bolton through a consortium of other towns, including Boxborough, Littleton, Stowe, Hudson, Devon, I'm forgetting somebody else, but and we also build affordable housing, 100% rental housing. So a couple of thoughts. These are all great ideas and they should all get captured in your housing production plan, right? Because the housing production plan, I think, gets a little bit to Mark's point of who are the priority populations that you want this housing to serve? Is it seniors? Is it families? Is it college kids? Who are we trying to serve? And then which sites best serve that population, right? So if Erica's saying there's a lot of municipal sites, that's awesome. They're probably not all ideal for every potential population. So how do you kind of zero in on those things? And then that, I think, gets to Eric's point of being able to kind of sell the vision. Like, this is where we envision family housing, this is where we envision senior housing, and here's why. Municipal RFPs can crash and burn. People come out of the woodwork. You can't dispose of town land! We might need it for something. Sorry.
It's Halloween.
So while it might feel like the fast way to get things done, and it can be, certainly for...
She likes affordable housing.
Yes, I really am very strong. For towns that are very motivated, it can be a pretty expeditious path. We're working with the town of Norwell. They had a proposal go to town meeting in 2014. It didn't get passed at that town meeting. Then they rejiggered it and tried again in 2015, municipal RFP, and it did pass. And it's only going into construction now. So that's been 4 years, and I would argue that's been a pretty smooth process.
And that's for an RFP or for?
That was for an RFP for municipal land disposition.
Yeah.
So it's a long time.
It's a long time frame. And I know like Boxborough's been working on one forever. There's a lot of communities that start it, and then you just, as I said, a lot of other interests, competing interests.
Yeah,
like community centers and senior centers and other things.
That's to me, that's what it seems like. Getting it through town meeting, I know it's tough, but if we can get it through, it's through.
That's right.
Whereas
Absolutely.
if you do the RFP, you have it's this ongoing process of hearings and
Can be.
and
Yeah, it depends on
neighbors
how
and-
you write the RFP.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think Mark, I appreciated that point at our forum the other day of really being clear and precise in your municipal RFPs, and a lot of towns aren't. So they get sort of what they asked for, which is a hodgepodge. Just one kind of clarification on this, I think, on this Littleton bylaw. So this is, I think, a good example. It did recently pass in Littleton. It was approved by the Attorney General and DHCD. Everybody blessed it. It is, however, a special permit for a senior residential development. So even though they don't deed restrict it for 55 and up, they're not going to approve the special permit unless it's for a senior residential development. So I don't want you to think that there are families moving into these developments.
Because
I think we were thinking families, we were thinking potentially a young person that, could, doesn't have all of the,
They might, but a senior developer is gonna build a building that really meets the needs of seniors. And
No, and I
that's
think
how they're
that was
gonna
the
market
intent.
it,
Exactly.
and that's how they're gonna advertise it, and that's how they're gonna staff it.
But yes, I read an article about that bylaw, and pretty much they were saying in order to get it, in order for it to count towards SHI, they couldn't deed restrict.
Restrict it, right.
So if somebody young did want to move in there, they could, right?
I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd have to
Yeah.
read a little bit more of the actual regulatory agreements that get generated through this, or the ZBA decisions, but my understanding is that you can restrict occupancy to 55 up, but you cannot exclude children. That's really the critical thing. So somebody in the household has to be 55 and up, but that's it. Everybody else can be 10 if they want to be.
So when we defined over 55 in the cottage overlay last year, we did say somebody has to be over 55 and up, but we did restrict children.
Right, so that's what gets you caught by the
Yeah.
Attorney General's
So
office.
that was the,
well, yeah, because I think we restricted children by saying they could only be there for
No.
more than 9 months or something like
Or
that.
6 months
right.
or-
Or 6 months or so, it was, yeah. It
But that
thinking-
was for the units that were gonna be deed restricted, because there could be a portion that were not deed restricted.
yeah.
So that, okay.
This didn't have anything to do with affordability, though.
Well, that was the other point I was just gonna make, was
It's
this
not affordable,
doesn't, this one doesn't say
I guess.
anything, right.
I was wondering if I missed something. I'm like, there's no affordable housing in this file.
And I don't think Littleton has inclusionary zoning. I might be wrong on that, but, so if you want, if the goal and the intention is to make sure there's at least some affordability, you're gonna have to stick it in here, because Littleton was silent on that subject.
Well, again,
They're
this,
not even
this,
giving land.
I mean,
Right.
the only reason why we have this one is just because it was something that was recently
Yeah,
passed.
I think it's
Yeah.
a great template to start
Yeah.
with. I mean, it's very comprehensive. It includes assisted living and community,
It has-
continuing
yeah.
care. You guys might not.
Yeah, it had a little bit more than I think what we were looking to originally include. We were looking to pare it down some, but
But I know, like,
had a lot of
so
good
Penny has a good pulse on the COA. I know Ada was here, and I know Teresa was here saying the same thing when we were doing the cottage overlay is, it's just 2,400, it's just too big and too expensive, so. Like, what size units, type of units would, seniors want? They want 2-bedroom, they want 2 bedrooms so they could have grandkids stay over, probably, I would assume, something like that, 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet,
I think you definitely have to have the availability of 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, just for a husband and wife who snore.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. But, I mean, that's reality, boys and girls. But it also, your example of wanting to have a grandson, maybe come and stay to help look after them at certain times.
Yeah.
I thought that in this, they spoke to that really well without putting a specific size on it. That, your first level needs to be suitable for bedroom, bathroom,
they do have a
kitchen,
size.
living.
Yeah.
Did they have a
They
specific
had,
size?
I thought I had 25,
1,800 square feet.
I see, oh, retail up to maximum 25.
Yeah,
Okay,
I thought they had
sorry.
they had a description of basically saying you needed 2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms
and 1 level living,
Yeah.
without saying it's gotta be 800 or 1,000 or 1,200 or, I don't think there was any maximum, sizes either, but.
Yeah, I guess my concern was I didn't want to put a number on it, not knowing
What
what
would be
would,
the,
yeah,
yeah.
what would be advantageous, like what.
Well, and I don't think they have to be cookie cutter. I don't think
Well, exactly,
everyone
yeah.
has to be exactly
I-
the same.
I-
There are some
yeah.
I would
seniors
agree with
that,
that, yeah.
I mean, I've got Martha, she probably romps up and down her stairs, 10 times a day. Keeps you fit.
And certainly Regency is all 2 stories.
Yeah, so, but I think you have to have a mix, I think Mark's right.
Yeah, I think.
But everything is on, they have one, it's one level,
Everything on
I
one
think they
level.
have a master on pretty much everywhere at.
Yeah, I
Every
think
floor, the first
So the
floor.
first floor.
Master,
bedroom.
yeah, master bedroom, first floor,
Master
master
bathroom.
bedroom, yeah.
If I could say something, Kevin O'Brien, I'm a little bit confused listening to this as to what your real object is. In the beginning, you talked a little bit about trying to meet the 10% affordability.
I think
Yeah.
the 2 objectives in my mind are to meet, to build towards 10%,
Yeah.
but also to add senior housing, that's,
We're trying to,
combine
there's
it.
two,
Yeah,
there's really
that's
two.
that's the 2 objectives that I see, is to make a real stab at affordable and to, allow seniors an affordable place to live. I mean, that's,
Are you thinking that senior housing that has an affordable component is what you really want to have?
I think so. Should I not?
No, I think that's admirable.
I think there's
Almost as
two
admirable
things.
as having truly affordable housing.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say, I think there's 2 things, I think, one, we have an example of a senior housing bylaw that we, I think, need to add an
Yeah.
affordable component to it. Because I think whatever we put forward for any type of development, we wanna have an affordable component to it. I just don't think that we should be really allowing any development without kind of that consideration there.
For sure.
But I think there's another component that we wanna look at, just straight affordability, or excuse me, affordable housing, and that's where, at least, I'm just struggling a little bit about what we need to do to move forward with
Yeah.
that type
Yeah.
of initiative.
I mean, there was some trepidation, I think, in town when is it the Regency up here in the front?
Yep.
To restrict affordable housing to people over 55. And, the message we got from the state at that time was that we'll let you do it this time, but maybe not going to let you do it in the future. We might have to revisit that.
Well, I mean, that's-
How
ask
long
about
ago was that, can I ask?
Well, it's
What,
10,
About 10 years
15
ago.
years.
about 10 years,
15 years.
So
No,
around-
about 15 years.
Well, that's,
Probably, I think it started probably close to 15 years.
Yeah, I think it
And
started
then finished about 4 years ago.
isn't that the feedback we were getting from the state? Yeah, that's the feedback we were getting from the state, just what you said.
Yeah.
That would, we're not necessarily allowing. So that's why I'm saying I don't want to age restrict. I would like to design it for seniors.
Yeah, I'm not sure DHCD will see that distinction. But again, if maybe there's a way to promote 2 or 3 strategies all at once.
Yeah.
I think DHCD would be much happier to support and approve a senior project if there was a family project in the pipeline somewhere somehow.
Yeah.
You're meeting
At-
their needs.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just, when I say DHCD, I'm not only thinking about sort of the zoning, sort of either a friendly 40B kind of model, but I'm also imagining, as we've talked about, that truly affordable housing requires subsidies in far in excess of what the town could provide, even with free land. So DHCD, is gonna hang on to those purse strings pretty tight, and again, it would be more compelling if we could do a senior development and a family, or something, or both at the same time.
Well, as long as we didn't have to deal with HUD to get it written.
You're lucky HUD's almost out of business. So.
Yes, I was gonna say, that's not gonna be there.
So, so it's sounding like the perfect development would be, say, 50% cottages, 50% apartment type things, something like that, that type of mix. It's kind of what I'm hearing. We need some market rate to support affordable, and to have 100% affordable, it would take more than just land, it would take, well, how would you line, that would have to be state, would have to be lined up to do that, so you'd have to get the state involved, and so you'd have to get housing department involved.
Yes,
Yeah.
if you wanted to serve households, if you wanted to serve more than 25% of the development, which is the 40B requirement, so if you wanted 100% affordable development, the subsidies required would be significant enough that you'd need to go to the State Department Housing Task for money. So as I said,
What's the process to that?
yeah, Yeah, it's timely. The state sort of opens up the door. It's called a one-stop application, approximately once a year, sometimes twice a year, but once a year. And you get in line with 50 other projects, and then you wait, and then you try again the next year, and maybe you try one more time.
That doesn't sound appealing.
It can take 3 years, but again, there's really no other way.
So it sounds like
to
the
get-
combination is that if we're gonna do a bylaw, it sounds like it needs to be a combo type, market rate and affordable rentals. Some.
There is nothing fast. There are no fast strategies.
Well, I'm not saying fast, but I'm saying to get something through town meeting that would meet state requirements, you know, that would get approved by Attorney General's office, that would get us some affordable, it sounds like it needs to be it can't be all affordable. It sounds like it needs to be a mix of market rate, cottage type units and an apartment portion.
Well, even depending on the size, it may still not pencil out numerically.
Yeah.
You know, and just because you pass the bylaw doesn't mean you have a developer who's interested.
No,
You know what I mean?
And
So
that's why we're having, you know, we're not
Yeah.
trying to do this in a vacuum because
Exactly.
we don't know what developers want. So
Right.
it's-
And that's where
They
I think
want
we're
money.
trying, well, and I think we're trying to reach, you know, last thing we want to do is propose something that a developer's going to be like, I'm not, this isn't interesting to me.
I mean, what I thought was interesting, and maybe you can outline the project you're doing in Medway, which is a nice suburban community, they do have services, I think, but, I mean, give them a sense of the type of values that needed to be contributed and created, and what the cost is for relatively modest-sized homes. It's at a much lower income, but I think that'll give people a sense of what the challenge really is, going all affordable and all very affordable, because I forget, I know I've read a little bit about it, but what the percentages are. But that's, you know, it's a nice town, it has some similarities to, you know, to Bolton in terms of affluence and just, you know, but it does, I think you have water and sewer?
Yes, so actually Norwell's probably a slightly better example
Okay.
because we, actually it does have town water, but not town sewer. It's 18 units, it's mixed, it goes from 100% of the area median income to 30%. So there's a pretty broad range. It was town-owned land, they gave it to us for $100. But they're also kicking in $1.3 million of town subsidies.
The towns?
The town's putting in 1.3 million, the state's putting in about 2.5 million.
Oh my God.
For just 18 units?
For 18 units, I'm telling you. And we consider ourselves pretty lucky that our total development cost is around $375,000 per unit to construct. And we're getting about $1 million loan. So the total development cost is around $5.5 million for 18 units. And that's a pretty good price.
What state program
So-
offered that money?
Yeah, so we're participating in something called the Community Scale Housing Initiative, which is a new DHCD funding program specifically for projects that are 20 units or smaller.
Is it grant-based type of thing?
Basically, yes, yeah, yeah.
But it just, the numbers are sobering when you really take out the private side and take out market rate housing. The numbers are very much.
And on the 40B rental side, I mean, it's very hard to find a 40B rental project that's under 50 units. Because the only way Mark makes money is to sell his very nice, very lovely market rate houses, and then he can let 1 or 2 or 3 go for probably a quarter of their value. Yeah.
But yeah.
On the rental side, you don't, especially out here in this market, you don't have quite that variation, right? In Cambridge, they can charge $4,000 for a unit. Ooh, sorry. And then charge this guy only $800 for a unit. But in Bolton, that difference is not going to be $3,000. There's not a $3,000 spread.
Can you tell me about
So-
Boxborough's development there? That's all rentals?
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all rentals, but it's what, 200 something?
It's 240 units, it's your typical 75, 25, market rate of probably 2 bedrooms.
But all rentals count as affordable no matter what the market rate is?
Yeah, that got them to the 10% because they got 240 units, yeah, or whatever the number.
So even if it's 2,000 a month rental, it's still affordable.
They're higher than that over there. Now, what you have is 25% of them are affordable, probably 2 bedrooms in about the $1,400 range right now is about what we see.
Yeah.
Those market for a 2-bedroom, they're probably $2,800 over there, would be my guess. But that's an estimate, I'm not sure if I'm.
But so they get 280 units that count towards SHI?
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you know if they had water and sewer or?
No.
No.
No, they got
That location?
big treatment center and community wells and all that stuff,
Wow.
which is a whole nother problem.
Now, is that an RFP or a bylaw?
No, that was privately developed, but that was developed, I think that was approved in '05, '06, sat there for the whole recession, and then was recently built, and they built it and it's already for sale. So the whole project right now is for sale, now that it's up, and I don't know if it's fully occupied, or I don't know how they've been doing for occupancy, but
For sale,
that's
is
being
that
sold.
the original plan, or they're just not?
That's just a business decision for the developer, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's a different, I think that's different than what you're looking at, but it's hard to get, the 40B lets you get to the 25%, and I know that doesn't really move the dial as much as people would like.
Yeah.
But without subsidies, that's generally what's viable. You might get a little more, here and there for sale, for rental, maybe different, but it's
So
not as much of my
if perhaps we
expertise.
were to give land and allow some, portion of like an apartment complex, maybe, could you ask for 50% affordable, or?
It would all depend on the components of it. I mean,
That's what has happened at Bolton Woods Way.
What's that?
Yep.
Bolton Woods Way was made 50% affordable.
Okay.
And that
Town-owned
was-
land,
yeah.
town requested that developer.
That was an RFP?
That was an RFP.
I
yeah.
assume so. I just know it was a
I think it was.
It was a local
friendly 40B that
Yeah,
was
it was a
inspired
local
by the
initiative.
town.
This is hard.
It is hard. In a way, it seems that the planning board's job should be to determine what kind of housing people living in and around Bolton need and what makes for a nice community. The developer decision-making, it's going to change from year to year depending on the finance and all sorts of other things. And you can only...
And the market.
Yeah, the market. And the market is the only thing that builds the houses. And, we should try to find out what is it that we want to have happen and try to describe that as best we can. Developing town-owned land through an RFP, that's really a separate issue.
Yeah, no, I think that, I think that's.
And
Well, why
a
couldn't-
worthy one.
Why couldn't we, in a bylaw, allow, put that stipulation that, could be on town-owned land? Why couldn't that be in a bylaw?
It could. I'm just saying, if we acting as a town want to put out an RFP for land that we own to have affordable housing built on it, it's really a separate kind of activity from writing zoning that's going to allow what we want to have in town.
I wonder if you should just get a working group together and start hashing things out.
Well, so we did just form the Housing Production Plan Committee to work on that and, to work on all these items. I was trying to do something in parallel. We'll see if it works or not, I don't know, but.
That was sort of my original question. Do you
Yeah.
want to focus on the housing production plan first and then write the bylaw?
Well, I definitely want to get
Understand the
the.
demand better
Yeah.
and the need?
That might be a better approach.
Well, for sure, we're kicking off the Housing Production Plan Committee to do just that. Yeah, and whether we can figure something out before February for a bylaw. It's not a lot of time, I know.
But if it ends up, if that
Then we
house-
don't cut the deadline, then.
Yeah, then but if we focus on the housing production plan, maybe it's the following year that we
Yeah.
we look at the bylaw or
But
something.
so the Housing Production Plan Committee kind of reports to us, so if we say, hey, we've spent the last 3 or 4 months and this is what we learned, I want to work close with this committee.
Wait, are we gonna have members or something, or?
Yeah, somebody of our committee
Yeah.
will be on there. But yeah, so we're definitely on that front, definitely moving forward. It's advertised. We just got that
We only have one inquiry.
one resident.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had a 7-person board. We said 4 of them should be from
From your
in.
boards and committees,
Yeah.
and then 3 just residents.
So we have that one resident. I've asked a couple of other residents that I know that are interested in this area.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Don't
Penny?
do that.
Penny? Penny, you interested in joining a committee?
Depends on where you
Next.
I was about to say the best way to get people, now, forget the comments you guys just made, but the best way to get people on committees, and a few of us who've been around a long, long time will say, is to go ask.
You just ask them.
Yeah.
Advertising just doesn't.
Yeah, well, so we got one person that seems good from advertising,
Yes.
based on, you know,
That's good.
but I did ask a few
Enthusiasm.
people too.
Anyone in this room interested?
I might be,
Oh, yay!
maybe.
Well, it would be great to have somebody involved with the council on aging too,
Definitely,
because,
yeah.
you know, you're tied into, you know what people would want. You know, so it would be great to have that perspective.
You know the need.
I know the need.
Yeah. So for sure, we're going that route, so, you know, I think this has all been great input. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
What boards have you got represented on this?
So we said, pretty much as town boards, we said from
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen, Planning Board.
Have they all
Affordable
bought
housing.
in?
Huh?
Have they all bought into your,
Or selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen approved the committee.
okay, well, but have you talked to the other committees?
No.
No,
Wise to do that.
yeah,
Go talk to them
Yeah.
before you say, we're gonna have someone from your board on our committee. Because you're doubling the amount of meetings they have to go to.
And we
Yeah,
didn't
no.
spell out specifically,
We
we
didn't-
just generally said, you know, foreign.
So we had 7 people. We thought it would be good to have a majority of the people kind of who know what's kind of going on in town. So we said, you know, from Board of Selectmen, anybody in any committee, you know, pretty much in town. You know, and then 3 residents not in committees. I think that's what we said. To get a kind of mix of people.
So you made me now have 2 residents.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can bet.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Annie, you're on council on aging, so you'd be a board member, right?
Yeah, but you didn't have the council on aging as your board, right?
We didn't specify.
Yeah.
We just said.
Oh, you just said any board counts?
Town.
Oh, that's an interesting
I don't
way
know.
to.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
seriously
Yeah.
think
So
about
library
which
gets-
boards you want represented, you know, because they bring different things to the table.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, we wanted,
And-
we were hoping for somebody from our committee, you know, just to be the liaison and then Board of
But
Selectmen.
since it's your sort of subcommittee,
It doesn't have to be, you're right, yeah. Because it's our subcommittee, we don't necessarily need to have one of us on there,
would be a good idea, though.
yeah.
Probably a good
Yeah.
idea. You want to keep
But-
some idea of what they're doing.
Yeah,
But they report.
but they report to us is all I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
so. It's not like, you know, we would hope that there would be collaboration, but, you know. Yeah, so, I don't know, anybody have anything else?
We're not going to discuss rather the rezoning of the lands on
Well,
713 through
I was-
718.
yeah, we have that on the agenda, so we can do that, but I just wanted to wrap up this particular one,
Okay.
since all these people are here
Thank
for
you
that.
for coming.
Thank you
It's
so
been very
much.
helpful getting your input.
This is like our first.
I may thank you. I'm not sure I'm going to thank you.
Thank you for volunteering, Karen.
I'm not sure, don't.
This is our first steps in this direction, so it's really
Your
discovery.
hearts are in the right place.
Yeah.
You and me, Well, where's Kia?
Nice to see you. How's everything going?
Thank you, everybody.
Retired now?
Fully retired.
Excellent.
Thank you for coming, thank you.
All right, so that was the senior housing bylaw. So stormwater bylaw, that was, you were gonna come up with some numbers?
I was gonna put together, so I honestly, I just haven't had a chance to come up with the actual language, but what I did do is I pulled just a couple of examples from other towns.
And I have
which
Weston's as well,
spurred
but-
some questions
Oh,
on
okay.
how you guys wanted to do it. A lot of other communities that do a stormwater bylaw actually have like a stormwater committee. I assume we're not gonna go that direction, it won't be that formal.
No, no.
So, is this gonna be a separate stormwater bylaw? Do you wanna just add to our section 250-23 where it talks about the regulations for commercial uses? And add a section in there that talks about stormwater requirements?
Well, I'm open to either. It doesn't really matter to me. I guess,
So currently our stormwater management is all within the subdivision rules and regulations, so what's gonna be different from what we have?
So this would be more for commercial, that's the way that I understand.
well, there's two things. One, I think it's on our common driveway.
Yes.
We basically only say you need to meet the 10-year. And what we need to do is we need to revise it to say, no, you need to meet the Mass State Stormwater Standards. Because we always ask for that.
Yeah.
And we should just get it in the bylaw because it's confusing for developers or whoever, that engineers designing it, that they need to meet that. So that's kind of one thing that's a little separate.
Right.
But yes, then this would not just be for commercial, it'd be for subdivision as well.
So, yeah, so it could be, it depends on, I guess, how you define it. So like for Grafton, for example, they talk about just land disturbance. Anything that's, disturbing more than 40,000 acres would have to go through their stormwater bylaw and get a stormwater permit. So that's sort of one approach.
How many?
I guess I was.
I'm sorry, did I say 40,000 acres?
40,000.
40,000
Square feet,
there you go.
which is basically less than an
Long
acre.
day, yeah.
Yes, an acre, I was thinking acre.
Well,
in
the
my
only
head.
thing I would want to be a little careful of is, the way I think about the Mass State Stormwater Standards are, is, they don't have jurisdiction for for housing 4 and under. So I wouldn't necessarily want to do that. Like I was thinking, this is for subdivisions, for houses 4 and over, like bigger areas.
4 acres in a way?
No, 4 units.
Oh, so common.
Or for.
So I think for Bolton, we already sort of do that, because our
Okay.
subdivision rules and regs are required to meet Mass DEP stormwater standards. When we updated it in 2015, we included that.
Yeah.
So we're good on subdivision.
Well, no, but this is going beyond the Mass State Stormwater Standards. Because
Or
we're
because
adding
of the volume,
peak
but
yeah.
I think we can just update our
Just-
rules and
and just
regs
add-
and add that
okay.
in for the volume.
Okay.
And then same with the common driveway under the rules and regs for that, we can update that to require the
Then I would just
standards
update
and
the,
volume.
then I would just
But the
update.
piece that's missing is the commercial piece of it.
But I wouldn't want to make I guess, a whole stormwater bylaw just for commercial. Can't we add?
Well, that's what I'm saying, maybe we just
Yeah.
add it in under that one
I think we just
section.
add it in under the one
Alright.
section. I'm not trying to make it complicated.
I
I
wasn't
just,
sure how you wanted to do it.
If
you wanted.
somebody's
Yeah.
doing a commercial development, are they gonna look at our subdivision bylaws?
no,
To
no,
see-
so that's where we want to
that's-
add it under the
That's- yeah.
commercial.
Okay, yeah, add it
So
under
you
the commercial,
either
yeah,
do a
yeah.
stormwater bylaw that's for the entire town, but I guess what I don't want to do is I don't want it to hit single family. I don't know, like the smaller, we have,
If you're developing one house, you don't necessarily,
yeah.
Or you might or might
yeah.
not want
No,
it,
you
but
should,
it-
well, no, I think
But-
that's going a little too far,
If-
so.
yeah.
I guess that's what I was originally thinking, but if you guys think it should be a town stormwater bylaw.
And you want it to be a separate permit, or
So,
you want it to fall
what would the
under
bylaw
this?
be in the commercial?
So it's the same regulations as whether it's a subdivision or commercial. You're meeting the Mass State Stormwater Standards, and the only addition I'm adding on to that is they need to meet peak volume.
But that's in the subdivision rules and regs.
But it's only for subdivisions.
But I
So where in the bylaws would it say for commercial?
And she's adding volume, so, sorry.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about commercial though, that would be a new bylaw, or that would be?
We would add some language under our existing, the 250-23, the regulations for the business and industrial uses.
Okay,
That section where it talks about design review and all of that.
okay,
We would add a section to talk
okay.
about
So it'd be
stormwater.
simple, just a little.
I think the simplest way to do it is there's 3 things that need to be updated. Our common driveway needs to be updated to say Mass State Stormwater Standards. Just to be consistent, we should say Mass State Stormwater Standards and peak volume. The subdivision just needs to add peak volume, and then the commercial needs to say Mass State Stormwater Standards and peak volume.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then,
And
Yeah.
and the extra 25-year
No, that's the peak volume, the peak volume does that.
Okay.
It would be the peak volume for the 210 and 100 year swing.
Okay.
Doesn't all development have to go by the rule that no water
No,
from
so
the
this-
driveway?
so this
for
is-
the- Because there's a big problem down in East Bolton for the last 25 plus years. And that won't fall under this because of course it's pre-existing non-conforming. But I thought it was illegal for any water from any land to go
No, so
into the road and not be taken care of.
No, so the way the regulations are written is there's a certain amount of runoff that leaves your existing site. And the way the Mass State stormwater standards are written is they say, okay, if you're gonna develop on here, you need to meet your peak rate, so you need to slow it down. So you're still allowed to have runoff go off your site, but you gotta slow it down. What they don't specify is your peak volume. So you can still, and it happens all the time, so I mean, we see things, you can still increase downstream flooding. And this is what happens, when you develop, you slow it down, but you're still, because you're.
Well, it's pooling down the road and then it freezes and the cars slide and the.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
landscape's
how
taken
this was, but the intent is, there are certain towns that have gone beyond the state standards and said, all right, not only do we want you to meet the state standards, but we also want you to meet peak volumes. And what that does is it really keeps it on site and says, okay, your existing amount of water that's going off is going to go at a rate of the existing site, and the amount that's gonna go off is gonna meet your existing. So you really are demonstrating you're not increasing downstream flooding. And I just feel with all of these subdivisions that are going on and potential new development, it's, it would be advantageous for us. And we hear people come in front of us all the time about flooding here, flooding here, flooding here, that this is a mechanism we can put in place that would say, okay, we need to, now, that's not gonna change anything existing. I mean, that's already been developed. It's only for new development from here on out.
Well, and also that was kind of like the intent anyway, it's just that the way it's worded doesn't necessarily
Well, it's
capture-
just, I mean, people don't understand when you meet your peak rates, that doesn't mean you're necessarily still not gonna have downstream flooding. You absolutely could have downstream flooding.
Yeah.
It's just, the Mass State stormwater standards only address peak rates. And so that's why multiple towns have adopted a stormwater management bylaw that said, no, we need to go beyond the peak rates, we need to meet the peak volumes.
No, just trying to be devil's advocate.
Sure, yeah.
Like, so say a business wants, would that be so onerous that, say, a business would want to develop on the King property?
No, it certainly can be developed, it just means it might be a little bit more expensive, and you might need to have a more volume for your stormwater
And
systems.
the Kane property is adjacent to this existing problem that I was writing to Carol Gumbard about
Yeah, I mean,
decades ago.
it's basically, it's certainly not prohibitive. All it does is it adds a little bit more cost to the development, but it certainly will
But
protect.
during the initial development, going from peak rate to peak
Your
flow.
systems are gonna get bigger.
So they're gonna need more area for drainage.
You're gonna need a bigger area.
But I
to
mean, if
deal
you're in
storm.
development, what you're saying is percentage-wise, the cost isn't going up that much, it's just you have to.
No, because you could, what you do is you, to retrofit something would be ridiculously
Yeah,
expensive.
right,
But
but
to
as
do it
you're
in the
doing it-
beginning,
Yeah, right.
yeah, I mean, it's all, and it's all relative to what is your existing volume going off the site.
Yeah.
I mean, so one site, you know, if you have really good soil and real infiltration, you don't have a lot of volume going off the site. If you have another site where you have really bad infiltration, and a ton is going off site, I mean, you only have to match whatever your existing volume is. But that's where, by addressing volume, we really are getting at the downstream flooding component of it.
I mean, just storm drains would take care of this existing one. Storm drains in the proper place. Of course, the state owns that road up to Hudson Road.
So, just one more question on that, are we, for the common drive and the subdivision, are we only updating the regulation? Or do you want me to also update the bylaw?
Do we need-
Regulation we can waive, the bylaw we cannot. So for business, I was gonna, we don't have a regulation for business, so it would be the bylaw. So it's up to you how you wanna do it, how you wanna structure it.
So we can't waive it?
I don't think we
No, I don't
should
think
waive
we
it.
would. That's what
I
I'm saying, I
really-
don't think
I-
we wouldn't want to anyway, so it just, what would be more appropriate?
For what?
I think for consistency, if we're up, just
Yeah,
present
I think
that
it should be
update,
updated.
we're adding it for commercial, we're updating
I think it should be
The other
updated
two
draft.
first.
I
I
just,
mean, yeah, and I think it should get updated in the rules and regs
Yeah.
anyway
Yeah.
too,
yeah,
but.
but you're saying it, by
do we
us
want it in
doing
the
that,
bylaw or
I
not?
mean,
Yeah.
for developments, we can update the rules and regs next meeting.
Yeah.
Well, or.
We need a hearing.
Well, you're saying should we add a bylaw for subdivisions and, you're saying should we add a bylaw?
Well, it would be under major residential or phosphorus, it would be under one of those bylaws, we'd figure out where it makes sense to include it, and we would just have, just another line item that says,
so, I mean, the question is, yeah, do we add line items under all these different things, or do we just do one? Yeah.
Well, it should be consistent, it shouldn't say one thing in one place and.
No, I agree, it
Yeah.
100% should be consistent.
Well, it would be adding new regulation that covers all of the uses, and then going back through and striking it out, references out of the existing bylaws.
You'd at least have to take it out of the existing bylaws, yeah.
So they're consistent, or so there's no inconsistency.
Yeah, because you can't say one thing on the bylaw. and then-
Yeah.
Yeah, so do we do that, or do we just modify each
It
one?
doesn't matter to me, I mean, what do you think makes more sense and that could be more easily?
why don't I think about it for our
Okay.
next meeting?
Yeah,
And
let's do
as
that.
because sometimes when I'm editing, I realize, oh, this makes more sense than.
Yeah,
this
why don't-
way.
that sounds good.
And then I'll come up with
Okay.
something for you to do.
Revising commercial zoning district boundary lines to match parcel boundary lines, is that anything different today from last time?
No, I just updated based on our conversation last time, so this is basically what we agreed upon.
Which ones are different?
And
So,
now I'll create the actual map.
so the industrial is, oh, this looks like the same thing we looked at last time.
It was just been
but your
updated
little
based on our
edits, your
comments,
little
yeah.
edits.
We had small comments, it's just updated based on that.
Like, for example, on the limited business district, after 495, you wanted me to include the town land up to,
Oh, yeah, okay,
up to the property line,
yeah,
but not all the way over to the school.
yeah, okay, yeah, I got you.
Okay.
That looks good.
Okay.
Required design review board, review for major residential plan buildings, that's fine.
I think I think that one got included, but we decided to take that off last time,
Oh, okay.
for now.
Why did we decide to take it
I think
off?
we tabled it because we'd have to actually
Oh,
create
right,
the criteria.
Oh, yeah,
And we
take
decided
that.
that might,
Too much
that
work.
might, well, that might require a whole working group to do that.
Yeah, so take that off.
Allowing more than one dwelling in commercial properties.
So
Yeah,
that's in
easy.
there, that's, I have a draft, article in there for that.
Okay.
Other uses, so residential is one below, so what on here? So italicized is removed.
Yeah, and underlined is added.
Well, one principal building may be allowed for uses. Okay.
And other uses is anything besides residential.
Right.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah. And then finally, what Martha's been waiting for,
Rezoning of Main Street.
rezoning 716, 715 Main Street and 711, 713. So the Drury's property, or whoever's property will be when they sell it in the.
I'll read the,
Oh, yeah, John, do that, is Stan.
Huh?
He's the owner of Bolton.
He lives in
Cracker
Florida.
Barrel.
Cracker Barrel, yeah. So, my thought on this, before Mary attacks me, is. Yeah, I know it's coming. They've always been businesses, I just think it makes them more marketable to different new owners if they're, set in stone that they're gonna be businesses. The intent isn't to spread out and infect Main Street with businesses, it's just these two properties that have always been businesses, to give a surety to new owners that, hey, this is gonna be a business, you don't have to go through the ZBA for every little thing you wanna do. I get the sense that a majority of people would like them to be businesses, they're not necessarily, they have tons of issues, I know, parking and, egress, ingress issues, but, the intent is just to make it more viable, to make it a general store, to make it, some type of shop. We had some people in here last meeting that were interested in 711, 713 Main, right? And I think by not having it, you know, it's kind of in a weird position where people just don't understand what it is or what it could be by having its own residential. And go.
My hand was up first. Okay, a correction. 713 was a house, a residence. It was the Druids that changed it into a shop.
Mixed use,
Yep.
a shop and
So,
housing.
I do want to make a comment about affordable housing, because if you look at the town center, this is your affordable housing area. If you look at the houses that are either on the market or have been sold recently, they are very reasonable. Otis House 320, the Blue House 235 on the market now. Granted, a lot of work, but very affordable. Somebody just bought the pink house next to the common. I don't know what they paid.
Bambi's house,
Yeah.
family.
This is your affordable housing area. Why do you want to ruin it? So, second thing, have you checked into the legality of spot zoning?
I mean, it's two units, so it's not spot zone.
I recommend you talk to town council and find out if legally you can do this.
I mean, I think a few years ago, we rezoned Slaters and Skinner. And we did both of them, so it wasn't spot zoning, so kind of following that same.
But that's, I mean, this is a thickly settled area. It's zoned residential, so it's a little different than
Yeah,
Slaters and-
we would need to check, I mean, town council will weigh in on all these anyway, so.
I would check into that. The other thing is, 213 has had 3 failed businesses. They've had 3 failed businesses.
213?
713?
713, because nobody wants to do, you're not gonna get foot traffic, they just haven't been
There's not
successful.
the infrastructure to have that a viable.
It's really not a great location to want to do business. Now, fine if you've got some software guy that has a couple of people in there sitting on a computer all day, but if you're looking for a business that needs customers, that is not where you want to set it up. And that's been proven by the three individuals who have tried to run shops there.
Well, and clearly the antique store, you know, they went to.
Probably
that's
the
why they
best
small
thing to
foot
do
traffic.
is make 713 a house again.
Yeah, to make that a third affordable unit, because those are all mixed-use homes. They have some residential and they're pre-existing businesses. Both of them you have, and you know, we lost 2 affordable homes when the common went in. 3 actually, because 715, 717 was 2 apartments there in the Smith house, and then the other
What
rental
about
on
adding
the
them
other
to the
side.
mixed-use village overlay?
So-
Could we do that?
Like top of shop type
Yeah.
development. I mean, when we put together the bylaw for that, the intention was to have it conservated by 495. That was part of the cell when we did that bylaw.
But we did add Skinner into it.
Yeah, but Skinner's near 495.
And the other thing
I
is,
think that would be a hard
both,
sell.
you know, all these properties have real septic issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So maybe.
And parking issues.
Well, they have parking, but the septic actually is probably easier on the commercial than on residential.
Yeah, and, I mean, the parking, we somewhat thought we had, at least with the
Helped.
revised, yeah, we somewhat helped with the revised bylaw we passed, to allow some off-site parking.
Yeah. I mean, I see your points. I just, you know, I think it's a great, it'd just be so nice to have something in the town center as well.
Get a
We
food
do,
truck.
we have the new
Get
common.
a food truck into the common. when you
I like
have
that,
it.
actually.
That's actually a good idea.
Okay.
I love the food
And
truck
then
at
you can have your
Neshoba.
ice cream.
I love to
Yes. Yes.
What happened to the kid that was doing the college hot dogs? Did
Must-
he
he
like
must have gone
fire
to-
his
he must have
college?
gone to college.
Yeah.
Made enough money when to college.
Oh, we had the ice
He
cream
took all
truck
our hot
soccer.
dog money, went to college.
I also believe that if this moves forward, you're gonna get a lot more opposition from people who live in the area. I mean, you're just listening to us right now, but.
No, I know.
Well, and I know last year there were some residents that came
Yeah.
and spoke about the concerns.
And.
Well, I love to have a nice debate, so I like to keep adding
Well, you
on.
know, I mean,
I think the affordable housing component is a really valid point.
Yeah,
It is affordable.
that's true.
and that's all but I would
Yeah.
check on the legality, because it's spot zoning.
Yeah, I don't know.
Very tiny spot.
Can we look,
Zoning.
can we look into because if we put it into the mixed-use village overlay, then you could have like a shop on the bottom and, you wouldn't preclude
And housing.
apartments from a housing on
I
top.
just don't see how that would be a viable option, because Country Cupboard looked at that, and it was way too expensive to do this, because you need a sprinkler. if
Then you
it's
have
top
to
of shop,
sprinkler,
and
yeah.
it gets- and
Oh,
they can make them,
oh.
they can make them numbers work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, say goodbye to 470 Main Street, the cute little cave
Yeah.
that Stalman Hardley lived in. That's really another affordable place.
It's going up in
too.
flames.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad in a way. It wasn't, it just made the 50-year cutoff to be historic. But what a great little house and yard there. So I know the new business will be nice too, but it's sad to see these
Mhm.
places go. And Delma worked for the town a
Well,
long
my
time.
intent wasn't to make those places go. My intent
Right,
was to
right.
make, a Cracker Barrel, a general store, to make some of the 713 some type of business to revitalize it.
We are in such a disadvantage here. We didn't have the river we needed in the 19th century to have real manufacturing. We had the cottage industries. Now we don't have the sewer and the water that Littleton and these other towns have that make it a lot easier to do their plans for things. So we have to be creative and figure out a way to
Yeah, I mean,
overcome that.
we need, that's, yeah.
I mean, if you want to build up this town, you gotta work on the infrastructure.
Yeah,
Because that's what's
absolutely.
holding.
Well, I
it
mean, I've been
back. That's
saying
what's
that a
holding
lot.
the developers
Yeah.
back.
We need to see
Well,
that
so,
sewer water.
we've talked to Condyne, and they have so many ideas, but they can't do any of it because of the infrastructure.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not helping the Druids sell their property.
Yeah,
That's their problem.
yeah. If we take
They
it
bought
off,
it for a song anyway, so.
if we take
And
it
they
off,
should
will you
sell
vote
it
for the
first.
senior housing bylaw?
All right, let's not do bartering.
Can I just ask a question?
This isn't, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
What about this assisted living place that was gonna go up in back of,
They just couldn't find an operator, right?
Right.
Really? It's
so
because they couldn't
has
find
that
it?
permit been renewed?
Well, it's past the 2 years, but,
Yeah,
it's fine.
because I'm all for not renewing these permits like the 16 years we renewed Bolton Country Manor, the one across from the candy store.
they haven't asked for it, so.
Well, no, I'm not
Conduct.
talking about Craftsman, but that permit
No, I'm
was
saying-
renewed 8 times or so,
Oh, yeah.
over Sweeney when he owned it. And I don't think that that should be allowed.
What I'm saying is Condyne, what they, I don't know, I mean, I don't know, they have ideas on developing that land, but they're just up against infrastructure, they have to put in a septic, their own plant,
Now, where's this you're talking about? The one where it's gonna be the assisted living?
office park. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, they wanted to redevelop that entire parcel with like.
From the original plan?
From the.
You said the permit has expired.
Oh, with the assisted living, yeah, the assisted
Okay,
living.
I just wanted to ask about that, because I
Yeah,
knew it
that
had been
expired.
over 2 years.
Yeah, it's expired.
And.
I think if they found an operator and came back before us with it, I think we'd, renew it for sure, because it was a good thing to have, right?
Yeah, it'd be a new special permit,
Yeah.
but yeah,
We'd
it'd be
take
the
the
same,
same
it could be the
framework.
same thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like they're going that
And you
route.
may want to consider, if you want more businesses, why don't you look at other areas for businesses, like maybe down, the strip from the post office down
Yeah, well-
to Bolton,
Yeah,
Orchards.
well, for sure, so when we did Tadmore, I don't know, Martha probably remembers that, we divided out the business lot behind the DPW, and the owner or realtor for the diagonals and stuff, we're talking about doing something with Classic and combining, so, that's been in talks, and, you have 470, and we increased the coverage of, business zones, so.
So there's gonna be something new between Classic and the liquor store too now, right? That's gonna.
There's
I don't know.
definitely something going on. I don't know what it
There's
is.
land clearing, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
we haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard.
But
Nothing's
I
coming
thought I
from
had
us.
heard there was gonna be a new business down
They haven't come
there.
to
Yeah,
us.
it's not in front of us.
They would need to get a special permit, yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice is concentrate on those areas. Why start picking on something that
I just
really has
wanted-
no viability?
I love exciting you and Chia and getting you guys all fired up and coming into the planning board, because we get lonely, so.
Yeah, it looks like Laurel Learning is gone too,
Oh,
right?
is she? Oh.
Yeah, because I saw it's for rent.
You want out of here?
I need to get going, sorry, I'm on like a.
We'll make a motion already.
Can I make a motion to close the hearing?
Anyway.
Close the hearing.
Oh,
Well, you need to get out of here.
Are we dropping
Adjourn.
that article?
Huh?
Are we dropping that article?
Well, right now it's just in draft. You'll have to look at the next agenda.
Really, I mean, they could have affordable apartments. It's already a tight tank at the brick store.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you make good points.
Kidding.
Did you
Thank you.
second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.